Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto Prince of Uzushiogakure. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Naruto was cold. He blinked his eyes open and shook the blurriness from his aching head. How long he had been out he was unsure. The memories of his most recent beating flooded into the forefront of his mind and the tears soon followed. It had been his birthday today, and while that might be a cause of celebration for most normal 6-year-olds, Naruto was not normal. His birthdays caused him nothing but pain. While he was frequently beaten over the course of the average month, his birthday was the one day he knew he was going to be hurt, and hurt severely. Hokage Gigi did everything he could to protect young Naruto, short of having him confined daily, to protect him, but his efforts were never enough, and his workload and responsibilities as the Hokage took up most of his time. Today though, it had been the worst he has ever suffered. Yes, tonight Naruto had been beaten, raped, and urinated on, before he was cast into a river unconscious. Meanwhile in Konoha, to say the Sandaime was furious would be the understatement of the century. He could not find Naruto anywhere, and he just got word from one of his loyal Anbu, who he had scouring the village for his surrogate grandson, that he overheard some men talking about what they had done to the demon brat tonight. The men, a few of them shinobi, were rounded up and sent to Ibiki Morino, the head of the torture and interrogation unit. It wasn't that much later the Hokage received a report from Ibiki of last known whereabouts of Naruto from the prisoners. Hiruzen accompanied a large team of his best trackers and Anbu Black Ops, one of which had gravity-defying gray hair, to search the forest and the river nearby, but they found no sign of Naruto. The team stayed out all night, and would continue to search for the next few days, but they would never find him. The men responsible were publicly executed after they pronounced Naruto dead 2 weeks after the search began. Before the men were executed however, the Hokage along with Jiraiya revealed the truth about Naruto to the stunned crowd. Jiraiya took the stage and while in tears and filled with rage filled the village in on the little secret that Naruto was in fact his godson. The demon brat, as he had been called, was the son of their greatest Hokage. His true name was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. They revealed the reason they kept it a secret was to protect him from his father's enemies, namely the shinobi of Iwa. For many ninja this was cause for great sadness and shame. For years many throughout the village had shunned, spited, and hurt the child in some fashion or another, whether it was through words or physical violence. But no one was more destroyed about learning of Naruto's heritage than Kakashi Hatake. Jiraiya made the announcement that he, like his former teammate, would never step foot in this accursed village ever again and left. And so began the depression of Konoha. Back with Naruto. It had been 2 weeks since Naruto had awoken upon the shores of the once great Uzushiogakure. To say the young boy was scared and confused would be an understatement. He had food that he had foraged, and water that he had found. But for the past few days after he had blocked out the trauma, and recovered from the pain he had been exploring the ruins of this once great village. Right now he was exploring what reminded him a little of the Hokage Tower. As he searched through the various rooms and offices he noticed that all of the bookcases and desks were bare. He spent hours searching all of the building until he finally came upon the Azukage's office. Behind the desk lay a broken kunai. Naruto picked it up and ran his finger along the edge. He pulled his hand away sharply after he nicked himself. A few drops of blood fell on the floor and something amazing happened. Wow, what's going on? Naruto said as a ceiling array glowed into existence and the desk slid forward across the floor to reveal a hidden staircase. Slowly and cautiously Naruto descended the stairs and the narrow hallway that followed. He came to a stone door with a spiral design exactly like the one on his once white t-shirt. He touched the door and some of the blood still leaking from his fingertip activated another ceiling array. The great stone door slid open and Naruto entered. He came to a square-shaped room with 3 doors, one on the north wall, one on the west wall, and one on the east. He proceeded north and this room would change his life forever. As he crossed the threshold through the door marked, "Training," he saw a vast seal along the floor. He thought back to the other seals and decided he should touch this with his fingertip as well. The moment he did, the door closed, the seal lit up and 3 figures appeared in the center of the room. Hello. Naruto said to the 3 figures that had just materialized before him. Who are you? He asked unsure what was going on. The figure in the middle stepped forward, his long red hair swaying behind him. He was a tall man with light green eyes and two long bangs framing the sides of his face. He wore a black robe over what appeared to be shinobi armor. "My name is Sephiroth Uzumaki Young One," the man stated. His voice had a noble air to it. Naruto immediately knew this was a man of some importance. His mind though went over the mont's name. "Why, you're an Uzumaki too?" Naruto asked wide-eyed. The mont's eyes shimmered and the corner of his lip seemed to curve upwards if only a little. "Yes, we are in Uzushiogakure after all. Well, at least what used to be Uzu. I am the Shodai Azukage, or at least I was in life." Naruto's eyes bulged out and he trembled a little bit. "Are you a ghost?" he shouted, pointing his finger accusingly at the man. Silence followed for a few moments before it was broken by uproarious laughter from the three men. "Ah ha 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 ha, number baka," the leftmost figure said as he stepped forward. He was a tall, thin, but muscular man with spiky red hair and amber eyes. "We sealed our chakra into this chamber, and into these seals. You see, brat, every time a new Azukage takes the throne, he wears a seal that chiffons his chakra into this room. In the event the Azukage should die, his remaining chakra, which is infused with a piece of his soul, remains here, to train and guide the next Azukage. I am the Saitame Azukage, Ichigo Uzumaki." Again Naruto's eyes bulged and his jaw hit the floor. Ichigo smiled and pointed towards the other man, who had yet to step forward. Without hesitation the third man stepped forward and introduced himself. He too had spiky red hair, but with sharp blue eyes and pointed canines. "And I am his father Rin Uzumaki. Nidame Azukage. What is your name, Gaki?" Naruto pointed at himself. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki." The three men sent glances toward each other. "Come here, Naruto," Sephiroth said. Hesitantly the boy obliged. The two other cages surrounded him, and together with the Shodai, they laid their hands upon his head. Together the three cages entered into the boy's mindscape. Inside Naruto's mindscape, "Whoa, this place is a dump," Rin said with a frown marring his face. "Something is strange about this boy, that is certain," remarked Sephiroth. For some reason Ichigo chose to remain silent, a contemplating look upon his face as he followed his predecessors. They soon came upon a vast metal gate, with a piece of paper in the middle with the kanji for seal written on it. "Well, that explains it," Rin said. "He's a Jinchuriki," Sephiroth noted aloud. "Who are you and why have you awoken my slumber?" A dark booming voice asked the three men. Things were about to get interesting. "So this is the mighty Kyuubi," Sephiroth said with a small smirk gracing his face. This however infuriated the already angry and confused Biju. "You dare mock me, puny human? Come closer and I will feast upon your marrow." "Haha. Oh, looks like you pissed him off, Tusan," Rin noted with amusement. "Yes, quite, but somehow I doubt that is very hard to do," Sephiroth responded. In turn the great fox just intensified his glare. "Who are you, and why are you here?" At this Ichigo stepped forward. "We are the former Azukages." The Kyuubi looked intrigued and a little shocked. "We have come to find out who this young Naruto Uzumaki is. He doesn't exactly look like one, you know." The fox just laughed and closed his eyes. "No, he does not. I assure you, however, he is. So far I respect him the most compared to my previous Uzumaki jailers. Though you have wasted your time. I don't really care who you are, and I'm not going to tell you anything." "That's okay, Fuzzy-chan, we aren't asking," Ichigo responded, to which Rin bit back a laugh. "How dare you call me that, you insolent ant? Seriously, what was up with the Uzumakis and calling him Fuzzy-chan?" Kushina and Mito did all the time. It was infuriating. "What my grandson is trying to say, is that we simply came to review his memories, and see what we can learn," Sephiroth said. The Kyuubi seemed to grow serious, and a little somber at that. "I assure you humans, it is not pretty. You would be careful what you wish for. Once you have seen my jailer's life, you cannot unsee it." The cages raised a questioning eyebrow, but continued their task regardless. The three cages quickly set up seals in the great chamber of Naruto's mindscape, and a seal in the center of their foreheads. The sealing array drawn on the walls of the chamber basically would copy all of Naruto's memories, and then paste them into the minds of whoever was wearing the required receiver seal on their forehead. The three flashed through hand seals, before bellowing out, "Memory Mirror. Fusion." Memory mirror. Seal. Something quite unexpected happened, however. This unique Uzumaki Fusion Jutsu had never been attempted on a Jinchuriku before. Instead of just giving the cages all of Naruto's memories, they also gave them the memories of the Kyuubi and his past containers. Within a second they knew everything about Naruto Uzumaki, his heritage, his tragic life, the life of Kushina and Mito, and the life of the Kyuubi from the day he was split from the Gyuubi. Instantly after the jutsu was finished, all three men grew deathly pale, their eyes glistened with pure despair after witnessing the boy's life. Ichigo however fell to his knees. No Kushi-chan, how can this be? This boy is my grandson. Sephiroth filled with rage. Yes Ichigo, this young boy is the rightful heir to the throne of our once great village. He is the Prince of Uzu. One day he could have been king. But look at what has happened. I will not allow this injustice to be ignored. As the Shodai Uzukage, I swear to train this boy, and pass on all knowledge and training, to assure he never suffers like this again. Ichigo hardened his face into a look of strong anger and blazing determination. He too would train his grandson, the son of his little Kushi-chan. The three cages repeated the sealing progress, except they sealed all of the memories into a scroll. They then departed the boy's mindscape. Naruto watched the cages with confusion, as they all awoke and gave him sad looks. What just happened? He thought to himself. Ichigo soon got on his knee in front of the boy. Naruto, this is gonna be hard to accept, but the truth is, I'm your Gigi. Your mother was my daughter. Naruto's eyes grew massive and tears soon began to fall. He glomped Ichigo while crying his heart out. Rin and Sephiroth merely smiled in amusement. After the reunion was all over, they laid out the scroll onto the floor and drew a receiver seal on Naruto's forehead. They drew memory copying seals on their own bodies, so the boy would also gain all of their great knowledge and wisdom. Memorimira. Fuujin. And in a brief second, Naruto knew everything. He knew of the history of Uzu, the lives and struggles of the men standing before him. He basically felt as if he had lived as Sephiroth, Rin, Ichigo, Mito, and his mother Kushina. He knew about the fox Kurama and how he got there. He knew about his father Minato, he knew about Jiraiya, and Hokage Gigi, and Kakashi. He knew of his mother and his father's hate for Danzo Shimura, and some of the darker secrets of Konoha. He knew about the masked man that unleashed the Kyuubi moments after his own birth. He knew everything, including katas for many forms of kenjutsu and taijutsu. He knew countless hundreds of nin, kin, and fusion jutsus. He memorized all of the research about the Hirishin, as his father had worked on it and explained it to his mother, this and the Rasengan. His gaze grew hard and determined. He got on his hands and knees and said one thing. Please train me Azukage-samas. The three lifted him off the ground and with proud smiles nodded. And so began the training of one who would one day be known across the land as Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, aka the Golden Fox, aka the Prince of Uzu, aka Naruto of the Limitless Shadow Clones, aka the Golden Maelstrom, and many more names. He was no longer the demon brat, but while over hundreds of years worth of knowledge and jutsus, even more if you add in the Kyuubi's memories, he still was a 6-year-old boy. All he had to do was build and train his body, reflexes, instincts, chakra control, calligraphy, among a few other things, and he would be the strongest shinobi since the Sage of the Six Paths. No time like the present to start, said Naruto. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. And so it began. With hundreds of clones the boy began his training. It had been close to 7 years since Naruto had started his training with his ancestors. In that time Naruto had learned all there was to know of Uzu. Uzu was a hidden shinobi village founded and led by the Uzumaki royal family. The very same family that Naruto himself was descended from. The kingdom he himself would have one day probably lead. His mother Kushina was its last princess, and he himself was the final prince. In the last 6 years Naruto had trained day and night with countless shadow clones. His chakra control was as perfect as it could be, for the vast amounts of chakra his body contained. He had his clones run chakra control exercises every day. They ran along the ceiling of the training room while dodging kunai and senbon while twirling kunai on their fingertips. He had shadow clones go outside the training room to water walk along the ocean. He sent shadow clones into the weapon and jutsu vaults to reread all of the countless jutsu scrolls contained within. He himself trained with his ancestors while wearing resistance seals to build his body to the point of perfection. Every day he had clones forage and garden for vegetables and rice, while he had others fish. He ate a balanced breakfast, lunch and dinner and now stood about 5 feet 4. He had a lean build with tight compact abs and lean, but rippling arms. Picture a mini Bruce Lee. He wore black ninja training clothes and had mastered the various different kenjutsu and taijutsu styles of the jutsu vaults. He had finally perfected his own taijutsu style he called the cornered fox style. It required extreme flexibility and agility. It was centered on feints and lightning-fast strikes and kicks. There was no defense to it. The only way to defend against an opponent was to move and contort your body to dodge. For him it was extremely deadly and effective. He manipulated wind chakra to his fingertips and used open hand swipes and slashes that could slice a mon's throat open, without even touching him. It was a very deadly style indeed. Through the years of training, Naruto had unlocked his mother's chakra chains, and the blue flame release of his grandfather Rin. Rin is Rin Okumura from Blue Exorcist. The blue flames were actually caused by a very high affinity to fire. Similar to the Nidaime Hokage's affinity to the water element. However, curious enough, Naruto's primary affinity was wind. Using his collected memories from the memory mirror Fuinjutsu, he had mastered both and used them in conjunction with each other. Ichigo had taught him how to use his Zambato, Zangetsu, and he taught him his very own high-speed movement and running technique, Flash Step. Sephiroth had taught him how to use his Black Nodashi, Masamune, and taught him how to control the wind element to levitate and fly. After of course he perfected wind manipulation training by slicing a waterfall in half, followed by cutting a small mountain in half. Rin had taught him how to forge and smith weapons. Blades, especially with chakra metal. He made Naruto master fire manipulation, and taught him how to wield his katana, Kurakara. Every day was a routine of eating, spamming shadow clones to work on all shinobi practices, while Naruto himself worked on his body, his calligraphy, and his tai and kenjutsu. In his off hours he would practice to recreate the Rasengan from his mother's memories, and together with his 3 ancestors they would work on recreating the Hirishin. After almost 7 years they had accomplished all that they could. Naruto was ready to leave Uzu and return to Konoha and claim his inheritance. He said his final teary goodbyes to his grandfathers and had sealed all of the vaults into his body. He had sealing arrays drawn along his back which contained the Uzumaki treasury, the Jutsu library, and the weapons armory. He wore black Anbu-style pants, with black combat boots. He wore a tight-fitting black sleeveless zip-up vest, with one leather pauldron on his shoulder. On the pauldron was a silver fox head with a ring hanging from its mouth. He's wearing Cloud Strife's outfit from Advent Children, on his back was Zangetsu, and in his hand was Masamune in a reverse grip. On his hip was Kurakara. Goodbye guys, I will make you all proud. One day, the Uzumaki name will hold great respect and prestige again. He put on a yellow fox mask he had found within the ruble of the village, probably remnants of a carnival. The Keaton mask from Legend of Zelda. He looked one final time at Uzu and then with a burst of speed he flew into the air. His descent slowed and he threw a Hirishin kunai he had forged as hard as he could toward Konoha. The gates of Konoha. Izumo and Kotetsu were standing gate guard duty again. Bored out of their minds they kicked back and relaxed. Kotetsu. Izumo said, "Who would you rather bang? Kurenai when she's on her period, or guy with a vagina?" All of the color drained from Kotetsu's face and he looked toward his best friend. "You're sick, you know that?" He deadpanned. Suddenly Kotetsu stood and smacked his partner. "Look." He pointed toward the figure slowly approaching the gate. A man wearing a yellow fox mask, dressed all in black with a massive sword on his back, and very long nodashi in his hand was making his way toward them. "Halt! Who are you and what business do you have in Konoha?" Kotetsu asked with rare scene seriousness. Naruto stopped at the gate and looked at the two. The gate guards flinched and pulled kunai. Naruto didn't say anything, he just tilted his head to the side much like a curious animal would. His swords disappeared in a flash of blue flames, sealed once more into his body. "I am here to see the Hokage. I have some information regarding a missing person that he would be glad to receive. I assure you it is of the utmost importance." Would you please send somebody to escort me to him? Kotetsu looked to his partner and nodded his head. Azumo nodded back and shunshined to the Hokage building. He was back a few moments later. If you will please follow me, I will escort you to Hokage-sama. Naruto nodded his head and followed after the man. He could sense the Anbu hidden around him, no doubt making sure he didn't do anything stupid. The pair reached the Hokage building in no time and climbed the stairs. They walked past the secretary who eyed the mysterious fox-masked Naruto and came in front of the doors to Hirazen's office. With a knock and a shout of, "Enter!" Azumo opened the doors and escorted Naruto inside. The Saitame watched the mysterious stranger with great curiosity. "Welcome to Konoha. What can I do for you, mister?" Naruto stepped forward and tilted his head to the side once more. "Please tell me you haven't forgotten me, Gigi?" The Hokage's eyes grew wide and he ordered Azumo and all of the Anbu out of the room at once. After they left, he leaned forward. Naruto? Is that really you?" Naruto could sense the hope radiating off of his grandfather figure. He reached his hand up and removed his mask. Tears threatened to fall from his shimmering blue eyes. "Yeah, Gigi, it's me." The Saitame burst forward and embraced his surrogate grandson. Tears fell from his eyes and he asked, "How? I thought you had died? Where were you all this time?" Naruto laughed and hugged the man tight. "Call Kakashi and I will explain everything." The Saitame grew confused. How had Naruto known about Kakashi? But he didn't question it. He knew Naruto would explain soon, so he summoned an Anbu to retrieve Kakashi at once. A few minutes passed and soon Kakashi strolled into the office. "Yo," he said and approached the desk. He looked curiously upon the once again masked Naruto. Naruto approached the doors of the office and flew through seals so fast the Hokage could hardly keep up. Once he was done the seals, he raised his hand to the door and activated the strongest possible silence and privacy seal he knew of. He stood and faced Kakashi and removed his mask. "Hey Ni-san." Kakashi's eyes grew wide before Naruto slugged him in the stomach. Kakashi flew back against the wall comically and struggled to regain his breath. Naruto?" Tears fell from Kakashi's eyes and he fell to his knees. He begged Naruto to forgive him. He explained that he had no idea that Naruto was his sensei's son. Hell, he didn't even know Kushina was pregnant. He was an Anbu and after the guilt of Obito and Rin's deaths he was hardly ever around the village. He took constant A and S ranks to help keep his mind off of his loss. Yes, he still loved Minato like a father, but he was so ashamed about his friend's deaths he could hardly look him in the eyes. Naruto sat down and urged the others to sit down as well, cause this would be a long tale. He could have just used the memory mirror jutsu, but he wanted some secrets to himself. So after a few hours he finished telling the two of his life, his training, his ancestors, who after he left Uzu had finally closed off their chakras and returned to their spirits in the afterlife. He told them of the mix-up with the memory jutsu and how he now had the memories of the three Azukages, Mito, Kushina, and the Great Fox himself. And that's what happened, Gigi, Ni-san. To say the two shinobi were shocked would be an understatement. They had to pick their jaws up off of the floor. Hiruzen quickly regained his composure. "So what now, Naruto? What are your plans?" Naruto thought for a minute and then smiled. "Well, I promised you when I was a kid that one day I would take that hat, and I meant it, Gigi. I want to join Konoha. And I want to finally claim my inheritance. I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Prince of Uzu, and son of the Yondaime Hokage. I intend for the world to know that too." The two powerful shinobi beamed with pride at the young boy. "So you want to join the academy, Naruto?" the Hokage asked. Peeved. "Hell no. If it's all right, Gigi, I would like you guys to test my capabilities with a fight between me and Ni-san here. I am not some snot-nosed academy student. I ask that you allow me to fight Ni-san in the Chunin preliminary arena in the Forest of Death, with the Jonin present. If I perform acceptably, you give me my inheritance and I announce my return to the village. You give Memi Genin headband and I will join whatever squad you want. If I lose, I will attend the academy and wait until you think I am ready to claim my inheritance. Deal?" The Hokage thought about the proposal and said, "Deal. Is this all right with you, Kakashi?" Kakashi shook his head affirmatively and I smiled at Naruto. "You're in for quite the challenge, Oto. I hope you're ready." Naruto beamed at the man he considered his new big brother. "Always Ni-san. I will see you guys later. I want to go see old man Ichiraku and Ayame and get some ramen." It's been so long since I've had my ramen, I can hardly wait. The two men laughed but decided they would tag along and treat him to it. They had missed Naruto for so long, and Kakashi finally had a chance to make it up to Naruto for not being there for him. Damn it, he would be the best big brother anyone could ask for. The Ichirakus had a tearful reunion with their number one customer, and Ayame had gone positively red when she had seen the now very handsome, very muscular young man that was once the cute little Naruto-chan. After many bowls of ramen, and many laughs and stories, Naruto had checked himself into a hotel promising the Hokage he could wait till after the fight was over with Kakashi before he moved into his parents' estate. Kakashi had volunteered to put Naruto up in his house but Naruto had declined. He thanked him for the thought but said it wasn't necessary. Kakashi let it drop and turned himself in for the night as well. A week had passed and all of the Jonin shinobi had come to watch the fight between the mysterious, Golden Fox, and Kakashi Hatake. The council had come as well and the Hokage had summoned Jiraiya claiming that it had to do with Naruto. He sent the old pervert a message explaining some of the details but most importantly that Naruto was alive and well, and had challenged Kakashi to a fight. Jiraiya had raced home once he got the message and was now standing next to his old sensei looking over the two shinobi facing each other in the arena. The Hokage silenced all of the whispering shinobi and took his place on the arena floor. This shinobi has come to Konoha to join our forces. To prove himself worthy he has decided to showcase his skills in a friendly exhibition fight against one of our best. So let us begin. The Golden Fox vs Kakashi Hatake. Hajime. Naruto remained calm. Kakashi-san, you may want to take me seriously. I think you may need your Sharingan for this. Naruto said. In due time Fox-san. I merely want to test you a little first. Kakashi replied. Okay Kakashi. Don't say I didn't warn you. Lesson 1 Taijutsu. In a burst of flash step Naruto appeared in front of Kakashi, open palm already speeding toward his chest. No one could believe the speed the boy had just shown. No one even saw him move. Kakashi blocked and retaliated with his on taijutsu and soon the two were flying through punches and kicks. Naruto was bending and weaving, and turning acrobatically in the air to dodge all of Kakashi's blows. A few times Naruto was hit, but he just shrugged off the pain and seemed to be in good shape. The same could not be said for Kakashi. His Jonin vest was in tatters from Naruto's wind-enforced swipes. Asuma's cigarette fell from his mouth and his eyes widened. He's using wind chakra along his fingertips. Guy nodded. His taijutsu is indeed deadly. I've never seen this fighting style before. He added seriously. The Hokage overheard this and decided to give his own piece of wisdom. You are correct, Guy. The fact is this is Fox-san's own taijutsu style. He created it himself. He calls it, the cornered fox style. Notice that he does not block. The only defense this style uses is dodges. It requires extreme flexibility and awareness. Guy's eyes grew wide. How youthful. To think someone this young could create such a powerful style on his own. Fox-san burns with the spirit of youth. He exclaimed, much to the discomfort of the surrounding Jonin. After a few more exchanges Naruto and Kakashi leapt away from each other. Kakashi was breathing a little harder than normal but Naruto seemed unaffected. What stamina, he thought to himself. I told you Kakashi, don't underestimate me. Naruto said with a bit of humor in his voice. Huh, I guess you were right. That could have been very bad had you actually wanted to kill me, Fox-san. With that Kakashi raised his headband unveiling his Sharingan. Lesson 2, Ninjutsu. Fire Style. Fire Dragon Jutsu. Kakashi launched the Fire Dragon at Naruto who didn't move. He flashed through hand seals faster than Kakashi had and simply said. Fire Style. Fire Dragon Jutsu. A larger fire dragon sped towards Kakashi's, only Naruto's was made of blue flames. The two jutsu crashed into each other. Naruto's was stronger however, so after it cancelled out Kakashi's it kept moving towards him. Everyone had to pick their jaws off of the floor except Kakashi and Hiruzen, who knew of Naruto's bloodline. Kakashi leapt out of the way of the incredible fire dragon and sped through more hand signs. Water Style. Water Trumpet Jutsu. Kakashi released the built-up torrent of water at Naruto who decided to take flight into the air. He hovered mid-air for a few seconds to the shock of the stunned crowd before flying through hand seals of his own. With a deep breath and cry of, Wind Style, Great Breakthrough. He launched a concentrated blast of air at Kakashi. Earth Style. Earth Wall Jutsu. Kakashi slammed his palms upon the ground and summoned up a wall to defend against the crushing blast of wind. Naruto fell to the ground and vanished with a burst of flash step. He summoned Masamune in a flash of blue flames, and when he reappeared he cut the wall of earth down. That's the legendary Masamune, Yugo exclaimed. How on earth did he get the great sword of the Shodai Azukage? Everyone looked toward the Hokage. Now, all will be revealed soon, Neko. After the wall fell down, Kakashi was nowhere to be seen. Naruto's danger senses flared, so he rolled out of the way just as Kakashi was rising from his headhunter jutsu. Nice try, Kakashi, but that isn't enough to defeat me. Kakashi nodded and pulled out some shuriken. He threw one and flashed through seals. Shadow Shuriken Jutsu. The 3 shuriken became 30 and flew towards Naruto, who cut through all of them with his wind-reinforced Masamune. He again disappeared in a burst of flash step and swung at Kakashi. Kakashi ducked and rolled and threw a kunai, which Naruto easily deflected. Naruto opened one hand and shot a golden chakra chain at Kakashi. By now some of the crowd was connecting some dots, so Naruto moved his mask to the side of his head, revealing his face after Kakashi dodged his chains. That's Naruto, Asuma yelled. All of the Jonin looked shocked. Namikaze-sama's kid? The Kyuubi Jinchuriki? Kurenai asked. Yeah, no doubt about it. Look at the whisker marks. The blonde hair and blue eyes like his father. Hell, he has his mother's chakra chains. Looks like the cat is out of the bag, Ni-san. Naruto laughed. Sure looks like it, Ototo. Kakashi responded with a smile. Well, let's give him a good show. Naruto held his hands up. Resistance seals. Kai. Gravity seals. Kai. Chakra restriction seals. Kai. The ground around Naruto was crushed under the sudden release of his chakra. His body was engulfed in a tower of blue chakra. Everyone in the room was now shocked by the sheer pressure pressing down on them, Hokage and Kakashi included. He was holding his own against a Jonin, and the whole time he was holding back. In a show of pure speed, Naruto sped forward, leaving after images in his wake, and after resealing his sword re-engaged with Kakashi in a flurry of taijutsu. Kakashi tried to block, but his hits were too hard. After a sudden palm strike to the gut which took the air right out of him, he rocketed backwards. Without hand seals, Naruto summoned a shadow clone which kicked Kakashi into the air. Naruto flew at him and grabbed him by the vest. He spun and flew towards the ground, slamming Kakashi to the floor of the arena. Kakashi blinked his eyes upon and saw he was surrounded by shadow clones, each holding either Zangetsu or Masamune against him. Naruto stood back with his arms across his chest, smiling. So how did I do, Gigi? He called up to his Hokage and grandfather figure. Great, Naruto, but I think all the Jonin would like some answers. Collectively, the Jonin and the Shinobi Council shook their heads rapidly up and down. Naruto nodded and dispelled the shadow clones. He picked Kakashi up and checked to see if he was okay. Kakashi smiled and said he was just caught off guard. Naruto resealed all of his seals, and sealed away the fox mask. Naruto took in a deep breath and with a hardened gaze and a voice filled with a deep timbre began his tale. His presence demanded respect and oozed nobility but no arrogance. He came off a strong, mature shinobi. My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. 6 years ago, after being beaten and raped, I was tossed into a river. At this everyone looked down ashamed, some looked furious. I awoke upon the shores of my family's home village Uzu. There in the village I discovered my heritage, and found the sealed spirits of the Shodai, Nidaime, and Saidame Azukages. The Jonin took a gasp. Yes, 3 of my ancestors. My grandfather Ichigo, great-grandfather Rin, and great-great-grandfather Sephiroth. Through a trick of fate they gave me the memories of my mother. They trained me for the past 6 years in Tai, Nen, Ken, Kin, and Fujinjutsu. I unlocked my great-grandfather's blue flame bloodline, and my mother's chakra chains. After they trained me and taught me, they gave me their swords and passed on the will and the fate of the Uzumaki clan to me. I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Prince of Uzu, head of Uzumaki clan, and son of Princess Kushina Uzumaki, and Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage. Through my mother's memories and with my mastery of Fujinjutsu after being trained by the 3 greatest Fujinjutsu masters, I recreated the Hirishin, after recreating my father's Rasengan. He proved this by forming a Rasengan in one hand, and pulled a tri-bladed black Hirishin kunai in the other. He threw the kunai and disappeared in a yellow flash. He reappeared across the room and with a shout of, "Rasengan!" slammed the Rasengan into the wall. The Jonin looked shocked, as did the council. The elders looked emotionless per usual, but inside they were jumping for joy and plotting on ways to control the boy. Jiraiya came down and hugged Naruto, happy to see his godson. The Jonin clapped and came down to welcome the smiling Naruto back to the village. The Hokage silenced the room and approached Naruto, proud of the boy. "Naruto, I am happy to welcome you home as a shinobi of the Hidden Leaf Village." He gave Naruto a Konoha headband which he happily accepted. He tied it on his bicep and bowed to his Hokage. The Hokage laughed and shook his head. "Are you sure you want to be a genin though? You could be a jonin. Hell boy, you could probably take the Hokage hat now." Sume Inuzuka barked with a laugh. Naruto and the jonin laughed as well, but Naruto replied, "Thank you Inuzuka-san, but I'm not ready for that yet. I may be trained, but I need mission experience as well as leadership experience. I will become a genin and grow as a shinobi. I will form bonds with my age group, and one day I will surpass my father and my ancestors and be the best Kage I can. But today, I think genin suits me fine." The collected shinobi minus the council elders smiled and nodded toward the boy. The Hokage smiled and nodded in agreement. However, a genin cannot claim the position of clan head, so he decided to make a compromise. "I hereby pronounce you special genin. This new position will be very much the same as standard genin, with the exception that it will represent your advanced maturity to your peers, and allow you to claim your clan seat. Any objections?" He looked to his surrounding council members. "None? Good. Congratulations Naruto." The jonin gave the kid some thumbs up and well wishes. However, the women of the crowd were having certain thoughts about the boy. The way this kid talks and stands just screams alpha. If only he were a few years older. Hell, the kid's gonna be quite the looker, just like his old man. If he isn't already, hot damn. Thought Sume. If I wasn't in love with Hayate-kun and he was a little older, I'd give him a shot. Thought Yugo. This boy. No young man will make a fine ninja. But whoever gets him as a husband will be one lucky woman. Thought Kurenai. Naruto Uzumaki, you are interesting. You and me don't seem all that different. I think I'm gonna keep an eye on you, Foxy-kun. Thought Anko with a shit-eating grin. 3 days later, the entire village was gathered in front of the Hokage Tower. Everybody was whispering and gossiping. Hiruzen overlooked his villagers and silence soon filled the village. 6 years ago a great crime took place. I need not remind you of the details, but we lost the son of the Yondaime. Everyone looked depressed at this. It is with great pleasure though that today I welcome him back to the village. May I present Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Prince of Uzu and new head of the Uzumaki clan. The villagers looked on with wide eyes as Naruto stepped forward dressed in his usual ninja outfit. Only this time he wore a Uzu headband as a belt buckle. Over his black vest he wore a long black sage cloak with blue flames along the bottom and the sleeves, and his Konoha headband wrapped around his bicep. "I'm finally home," he said to the stunned crowd, who soon burst into applause and cheering. Some villagers with tears streaming down their faces. "I have suffered much in this village." Again people looked depressed, but I never stopped loving it. I understand why many of you were angry. I do not hate you, however. I was a constant reminder of all that many of you had lost. In a sick way I would like to almost thank you. The events of my childhood, however horrible, made me strong and they made me who I am today. I promise you all I will protect you as a shinobi of Konoha. And one day I will protect you as your Hokage. I swear this upon my pride and honor as both an Uzumaki and as my father's son. Thank you. To say the crowd was stunned would be another understatement. With tears of joy a great majority erupted into applause once again. There was a small majority, however, that clung to their hatred of the boy. Naruto, however, was truly happy. He was back home, and he could finally have the life he always wanted. And he deserved. It is with great pride I finally give Naruto his inheritance, and give him clan status. Naruto, here is the key to your parents' home, and here are the final letters to you from your parents. Open them later. I now pronounce you head of the Uzumaki clan here in Konoha. Good luck. After everything had died down, Naruto ventured into the clan district where he found his parents' home. It was modest in size, 2 stories with a great stone wall surrounding it to give it privacy. Naruto approached the massive iron gate. Naruto slowly swung it open. He closed the gate behind him and approached the house. The lawn was well maintained. Turns out it was a weekly D-ranked mission paid for by the Hokage, and there were flowers surrounding the property. Naruto walked up to the front door and bit his thumb. He swiped blood along the door and a seal array glowed to life. He walked inside and after seeing how dusty it was decided to begin cleaning. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto had finished cleaning his parents' house. He had discovered the sealed library in the basement that his father had used. The library was massive and it had many empty rooms with heavily sealed doors which he filled with his clan's jutsu and weapons. One room was even filled with the money and gold, and jewels from the Uzu treasury. So now the basement had his father's library and study, his clan's armory, his money vault, and a filled jutsu library. He created 100 shadow clones and had them read every book and scroll that he did not bring from Uzu, while he sat at his father's desk. Naruto pulled the scroll that the Hokage gave him and opened it. 2 letters popped out, both addressed to him, along with 2 journals, one red and the other blue. These were his father's journal and his mother's diary. Naruto set the 2 books off to the side, opened the letters. Dear Naruto, I'm so sorry that things turned out this way. I wish I had more time to tell you just how much you mean to me, and how much your father and I love you. I had such hopes for you in life, and I still do now even though I'm gone. Please be a good boy, eat well, study hard and meet a fine girl to love. Make sure she's strong and isn't some pathetic fangirl databane. I'm so sorry that I'm not around for you now. I was so happy when I found out I was gonna be a mother and I love you with all my heart. Oh, and if that Ero Sennin tries to turn you into a pervert like him, kick in the crotch for me. I know I shouldn't ask much of you, considering I failed to be there, but I always hope to one day rebuild our once great clan with your father. Maybe one day you can do that for me. Love, your mother Kushina. Naruto cried and held the letter close to his chest. I love you, Mom. I could never hate you. I wish I could have met you, but I know that you love me, and I will make you proud. After Naruto collected himself, he opened the next letter. Hey Naruto. It's your dad Minato. I hope you can one day forgive me for the burden I'm about to place on you, but please know that I have no other choice. The Kyuubi is upon us and I need to stop it. I'm so sorry, but I know that one day you will be seen as the hero that you are. Son, grow strong, find love, and be a good man. I know that you can do these things because I and your mother believe in you. I love you, son, and my hope is that one day you can do the impossible and get rid of the hate in the shinobi world. One day you may even get rid of the Kyuubi's hate. Promise me you will at least do your best. Love, your dad Minato. Again Naruto cried. Don't worry Dad, I'll do my best, and I will succeed. After Naruto was done he ventured upstairs, leaving his clones to study. He went up to the 2nd floor and found his parents' room. Inside he found a copy of his father's famous coat hanging in the closet. One day, I will wear you. But I'm not ready yet. After he checked around his new bedroom he walked into the room next door. As soon as he stepped foot inside, however, he fell to his knees. It was a nursery. And on the opposite wall sat a crib. Later, Naruto was standing in the training ground behind his house. It was an expansive meadow surrounded by forest. In the corner was a large koi pond with a massive tree to offer shade. In the center of the back lawn was a training area. Targets and dummies to practice weapons and jutsu. A white outlined taijutsu sparring ring, and logs for kicks and punches. Naruto, however, was in the center of the sparring ring going through different katas of his kenjutsu styles. He could sense Jiraiya walking toward him, so he sealed his sword and faced his godfather. What's up Ero Sennin? Jiraiya face vaulted into the dirt. Don't call me that Gaki. I am the great Toad Sage of Mount Myoboku. The ladies swoon at the sight of the gallant Jiraiya. He proceeded to do his kabuki dance. Know you're a shameless pervert, who women quite often tend to beat the shit out of. Naruto deadpanned. Again Jiraiya face vaulted. So what's up Ero Sennin? This time however Jiraiya grew serious. Look Naruto, I want to say I'm sorry for not being the. Save it. Jiraiya, I already forgave you. Look, you had just lost your student, your surrogate son. I understand. Hell, I look just like my dad, so I know it must have been painful to see me. I'm not some brat anymore. I was raised and trained by 3 of the best, and I learned about my heritage, and my family through their and my mother's memories. As awful as it is to say it, I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for what happened to me. I'm not saying that everything is sunshine and rainbows, however. Naruto paused and looked off into the sky. A look of serious contemplation marred his whiskered face. Deep down inside, bottled up and repressed, I'm sure lingers some angst. Some resentment to you and the village still lingers. It's deep beneath the surface, but they're all the same. It will go away in time, especially when I add good memories of this place and its people to replace the bad ones. But the fact is, Naruto turned to his godfather and smiled. I forgive you, Jiraiya. Jiraiya was a bit shocked. He had expected Naruto to hate him, to shout and scream and maybe even hit him, but the boy surprised him with this seriousness and maturity. Well, Gaki, how about I be here for you now? Naruto smiled. I'd love that arrow. Jiraiya-sensei. Jiraiya beamed in pride. So you shocked the hell out of me and everyone else. Kami kid, to think you taught yourself the Rasengan and the Hirishin. You're one hell of a prodigy. Naruto laughed. No, I'm not, I'm no prodigy. It was hard, but again I had 3 great teachers and all of their knowledge along with my mother's and a few others. I worked hard all day every day for 6 years. Not to mention I cheated and abused the living hell out of the shadow clones for all my chakra and mental exercises. I guess you could say I'm a master of hard work, determination, and unorthodox training methods. Jiraiya smiled greatly at that. He knew he liked this kid. Naruto walked toward his godfather and smiled once more. Oh Jiraiya, I almost forgot. There is one thing I need you to do, before I can totally forgive you 100%. Jiraiya smiled a small sad smile. Anything kid, just name it. Naruto was now standing in front of him. His smile suddenly turned sadistic. Take your punishment. He pulled his leg back tight, and let it loose right into the man's balls. UGGHHHHHHHHH. Scratch that. I fucking hate this kid. Damn you Kushina. 2 days later, Naruto was a little nervous. Today was the day of the Genin exams. The Hokage told him he didn't even need to show up, he was already a Genin. But Naruto wanted to attend, and take the exams so he could begin to make bonds and friendships with his soon-to-be fellow Genin, as well as get a bit of an idea of where his peers were at in their training. He was nervous about how these kids his age will react to him. Naruto opened the door to the classroom and walked inside. All eyes were on him the moment he did so. Oh, you must be Naruto. I'm Iruka Amino, and this is Mizuki. It's nice to meet you, Naruto. Naruto smiled at the man and shook his hand. It's a pleasure to meet you too, Iruka-sensei. Iruka smiled. He liked this boy already. He felt horrible when the truth about the boy's parentage was revealed. For years he had hated the boy for the deaths of his parents, but after he learned the truth he was greatly ashamed. This boy was innocent, and had a horrible burden placed upon his shoulders. He deserved to be hailed as a hero, but sadly he wasn't. Naruto, would you please introduce yourself to the class? Iruka asked with a smile. Sure, sensei. Hi everyone, I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. You can call me whatever you like, just plain Naruto is fine. I like training, reading, and ramen. I enjoy kenjutsu and fuinjutsu. My dream is to be the best Hokage this village has ever seen. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and smiled. Then he walked to an empty seat and sat down. He couldn't stand the whispers and the looks he was getting, however. All the girls had blushes on their faces and tried not to stare, and some of the boys were looking at him with envy. One boy in particular stared at him questioningly, but when Naruto turned to look at him, he went back to brooding in the corner. Iruka clapped his hands. Alright everyone, I'm gonna hand out your tests now. You have 1 hour to finish the written exam. Naruto looked at the test before him. This was way too easy. The moment Iruka told him them to begin, he picked up his pencil and in a flash filled out the paper. He put his pencil back and with his usual smile just sit back and pulled out a book to read to pass the time. The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. His father's favorite book. His too, actually. The Hokage's office. The Jonin were all sitting down watching the Genin exams through the Hokage's crystal ball. Kami, that kid's fast. He's gonna be a legend just like his old man. Asuma said with a smirk. Ho ho, I don't doubt it, Asuma. Hiruzen said with a smile. So whose team is he gonna be on? I mean, the kid's no ordinary freakin' Genin. He wiped the floor with Kakashi, no offense. Said Anko with obvious mirth in her voice. None taken Anko, it's true. I really want him on my team but there isn't a whole lot I can teach him. Truthfully, he's beyond my level and skill set. In a year or two he will be deserving of the SS class like his father. Remember Minato-sensei only got that ranking because he had the Hirishin. Naruto is 12 and he knows the Hirishin. Not to mention his obvious skill with Kenjutsu, Ninjutsu, Taijutsu, and the Fuinjutsu required to recreate the Hirishin. This kid will surpass us all at the current rate he's going. Hiruzen smiled at that. It's true, and the boy deserves it too. If I'm alive to see him reach Jonin, I may very well make him my successor. All the Jonin were surprised, but they understood. Back in the classroom. Okay class. Follow me to the training yard. All of the Genin hopefuls walked outside to the training yard and prepared for the next part of the exam. Naruto waited patiently for his name to be called into the sparring arena. After all of the other kids had their turns, it was finally down to Naruto. Okay, next up Naruto vs Sasuke. Naruto nodded and entered the ring. He studied the Uchiha across from him who kept his hands in his pockets. Okay guys, take your stances. Sasuke got into his family's stance, and Naruto stepped into a loose boxing stance. He didn't want to kill the kid. Hajime. Naruto just stood and studied his opponent. Sasuke did the same and for the next few minutes neither of them moved. Come on Dobi. Attack me. Naruto didn't rise to the goading. He just stood patiently. Well, if you're not gonna come at me I will come at you. Sasuke ran at him with his fist reared back. Naruto just dodged his punch. He continued to dodge and block all of Sasuke's attacks which proved to increase the Uchiha's anger. Finally after a few moments of this Naruto saw an opening and with a chakra-infused flicked the Uchiha in the forehead, and right out of the ring. Silence. Silence followed for a few seconds until Kiba and Izuka burst out laughing, along with all the other boys. The girls however were scandalized and rushed to help their precious Sasuke-kun. Winner Naruto, said Iruka with a cough. Dobi. Naruto looked back at Sasuke who was absolutely livid. Fight me again. Naruto turned away. Later, but for now let's continue on with the exam. Replied Naruto. This pushed Sasuke past the boiling point. Don't you walk away from me. The young Uchiha flew through hand seals before fire style, grand fireball jutsu. Iruka tried to stop it but he was too late. Everyone watched shocked while Naruto, still with his back turned, was engulfed in flames. That's why everyone was equally shocked when after the fire died down, Naruto was perfectly fine. He turned and faced the Uchiha and unsealed his Masamune before flash stepping. The class watched wide-eyed. Instructors included as Naruto appeared standing behind Sasuke with his massive Nodashi resting over his shoulder, but against Sasuke's throat. Do that again you arrogant piece of shit, and I will not hesitate to remove your head from your body. Look, if you want to fight later, that's fine. But when a match is ended, the fight is over. What you just did was cowardly and stupid. If I had died, or even been injured, you would be in jail right now for treason. If you paid attention you would see I already have my headband. You just unlawfully attacked a genin of Konoha. I could kill you or arrest you right now but I won't. The only reason I'm here today is to get to know with the genin I will be serving with. That invitation still extends to you. Now, if you try this shit again, I will end you. Got it? Good. With that Naruto calmly sealed his Nodashi and walked away. The entire class heard his speech, and they were a little terrified. This Naruto was not someone to screw with. I think he's learned his lesson, Iruka-sensei. Can we continue on now please? Iruka just nodded dumbly. Back in the Hokage's office. The Jonin were not impressed with the Uchiha. Many of them were scowling, but Anko Mitarashi was laughing her ass off. Did you see the look on his face? I think he was about to shit his pants. I got to hand it to that Gaki Naruto. Even I would have been intimidated by that speech. The Jonin nodded in agreement. Hey, the kid's right though, Sasuke just committed treason. If Naruto wanted to he could have killed him, and been within rights to do so. Hiruzen sighed. That maybe, but the paperwork, not to mention the backlash from the civilian council, would have put me in an early grave. There were a few snickers at that. Back at the training field. Now everyone, when I call your name please come over here while I grade your throwing abilities. Once again Naruto waited until it was his turn. When he was called up he calmly strolled up and in flash of blue flames his hands were filled with kunai and shuriken. He threw them all at once and they all hit their mark perfectly. Great job Naruto. So far you've gotten the top scores. Iruka said with a smile. Ha ha, thanks Iruka-sensei, said Naruto while sheepishly grinning and rubbing the back of his head. He's so humble, thought Iruka. Okay class, let's go back inside and we will do the final exam. After everyone was once again seated, Naruto waited until it was his turn. Once his name was called, he stood in front of the class and the instructors. Okay Naruto, I need you to perform the Kawarimi. Naruto kawarimi'd with a stunned Iruka, and then re-kawarimi'd so he was back in his original place. Excellent Naruto. Now I need you to henge. Naruto nodded and henged into his father. The class looked in shock as there in front of them stood Minato Namikaze. Naruto dispelled the henge and again rubbed the back of his head. Ha ha, sorry, couldn't resist. Iruka smiled. That's fine Naruto. Now I need you to do a clone. Sensei, can it be any clone? Naruto asked. I guess so Naruto, why do you ask? Iruka asked with confusion on his face. Well you see sensei, I have too much chakra to do the normal clone, and they end up looking sick and dead. I can do the shadow clone though. Iruka's eyes widened. Okay Naruto, go ahead. Thanks sensei. Shadow clone jutsu. 50 clones appeared in the room, some hanging from the ceiling upside down. Later. Okay class, I have your scores. Sasuke Uchiha, you are the new Rookie of the Year. Sakura Haruno, you are the new Kunoichi of the Year. Naruto, since this is your first day of the academy, even though you got the best scores for the examination, you are unfortunately this year's dead last. Naruto laughed. It's okay sensei, Gigi explained that to me earlier. Look, I became a genin a few days ago. I only attended today to get to know who I would be working with in the future, and I'm happy I came. Titles like Rookie of the Year and Dead Last mean nothing to me. Heck, they mean nothing in the shinobi world anyway. He's so mature, thought Iruka, and all of the jonin watching. You're right Naruto, said Iruka. Okay class is dismissed, be here tomorrow for team placement. As everyone stood up to leave Naruto spoke. Hey, does anyone want to go get something to eat? I'm buying. Several students stopped and looked back at him. Choji spoke up, sure sounds great. How about it Shikamaru? Sounds alright, said the lazy Shikamaru with a shrug. I'm in, said Kiba. Arigato en Naruto-kun, stuttered the shy Hinata. Shino merely nodded his head yes. Sasuke just kept walking, Sakura the fangirl that she was just followed after Sasuke. Ino looked at the cute mysterious blonde and blushed. Sounds like fun. Naruto smiled wide. Great, let's go. Ichiraku's. Hey Gigi, one large miso ramen for me, and whatever my new friends want on me. The old ramen chef smiled. You got a kid. Ayame smiled as well. So you made friends Naruto-kun? Sure did Nei-chan. Meet Konoha's newest genins. This is Ino, Choji, Shikamaru, Hinata, Kiba, and Shino. They all waved. Well, any friend of Naruto-kun's is a friend of mine. So what can I get you? After everyone had ordered and began eating, it was Kiba that spoke up. So Naruto, my mom told me you kicked a jonin's butt last week. Is that true? Everyone looked at him, obviously hearing about it as well. Ha ha, yeah it is. Naruto responded while rubbing the back of his head. Well, I wouldn't say you kicked my butt, Oto. Kakashi said as he sat next to his surrogate little brother. Ni-san, so come to celebrate with me. Kakashi eyes smiled. You did very well today Oto. I was proud of the way you handled a certain situation. I know your father would be as well. Naruto smiled and looked down at his feet. I hope so Ni-san, I really do. Kakashi ruffled Naruto's hair and ordered some ramen for himself. Naruto introduced his new friends to Kakashi. He explained that Kakashi was his father's student, and in his eyes that made him his Ni-san. After a good few hours of eating and laughing and telling stories, Naruto paid for everyone's food and said goodnight. His new friends thanked him and he told them all he would see them tomorrow. As Naruto was walking back through the village, he saw something strange. Mizuki was climbing out of a window with a large scroll strapped along his back. Something was wrong with this picture, so Naruto made a clone to go back and find Kakashi, while he followed Mizuki into the forest. Naruto lost track of time as he tailed Mizuki from the shadows. He came to a halt as Mizuki stopped running and leaned the scroll against an abandoned shack. Naruto took this time to quietly send shadow clones to set up a perimeter. Naruto took this time to act. He sent his chakra chains out to retrieve the scroll, and once he had it secure he sealed it within his body. "What are you doing out here with the forbidden scroll of sealing Mizuki?" The Hokage's office. Kakashi and the Hokage watched as Iruka showed up and demanded to know why Mizuki stole the scroll. He then fought with Mizuki, who tried to impale him with a Fuma shuriken, but Naruto intervened and beat the ever-living shit out of him. The forest. Naruto slung Mizuki over his shoulder and unsealed the scroll. It fell to the ground and he caught a glimpse of exploding shadow clone jutsu. That will come in handy, Naruto thought as he memorized the hand seals. He and Iruka walked back to Konoha together. "Thanks for saving me from that shuriken, Naruto." "No problem, Iruka-sensei, you would have done the same for me." Naruto woke up and looked at the picture of his mother and father on the nightstand. "Wish me luck, Mom, Dad." He took a quick shower and changed into his usual attire. He put on his black cloak with the blue flames and walked into the kitchen. He made a quick breakfast, ate it, and then headed toward the academy. He still had an hour to kill, so he went into a weapon shop that was on the way. The grizzled man that was behind the counter looked at the blonde and smiled. "Well, I was wondering when you were gonna pay me a visit, Namikaze-san." The blonde smiled back at the man and responded, "Oh, you were, huh, and why is that?" The big man gave a hearty chuckle and pulled out a Hirishin kunai. "Well, I heard you knew your father's jutsu. Who do you think made all of these kunai for him?" Naruto walked forward and shook the man's hand. "Well, I guess that would be you. I, however, already made my own." He pulled out one of his custom three-pronged kunai. The man took it into his hand and inspected it. "Well, look at that baby. You are a gifted weaponsmith, this is incredible craftsmanship." Naruto rubbed the back of his head. "Ha ha, thanks. To tell you the truth, I'm kind of out of a forge right now. Do you think you could make me some more like that one?" The man nodded in the affirmative. "Of course, how many do you want?" Naruto smiled and unsealed a large stack of ryo onto the table. "As many as this can buy me." The man laughed again. "I like you, kid. Tell you what, if you ever get around to building your own forge, you come see me for the metals you need. I'll give you a hell of a deal." Naruto shook the man's hand. "Well, it's a deal, mister? Name's Tanaka, kid?" Naruto nodded. "Pleasure to meet you, Tanaka." "The pleasure is all mine. Hey, I hear from some friends of mine that you have in your possession the famous Masamune. Is that true?" Naruto smiled. "Yeah, it's a family heirloom." Naruto unsealed the Masamune. "Whoa, it's just as beautiful as I imagined. Hey Tenten, get in here, you gotta see this." A girl, maybe a year older than Naruto, walked in from the back room. "What is it, da? Oh, my Kami. Is that the Masamune?" Naruto chuckled and rubbed the back of his head again. "Yeah, it was a family heirloom. Nice to meet you, Tenten, I'm Naruto." The girl's eyes grew big. "Uzumaki-sama, I studied the Uzumaki clan extensively. I read all about the famous swords and swordsmen. I'm a really huge fan of your mother, Kushina-sama." Naruto smiled and his eyes grew a little heavy. "Yeah, she was great, wasn't she?" "Oh, I'm sorry, Uzumaki-sama, I didn't mean to." "Hey, don't worry about it. I'm glad to meet someone who knows of my family. Hey, if you'd like, maybe sometime you could come over to my house, I'll show you the armory. When I was in Uzu, I sealed away the entire weapons room. All of our swords are with me now." Tenten's eyes grew the size of dinner plates and stars seemed to replace her pupils. "Really? That's amazing. Can I, Dad, can I?" Tanaka laughed his ass off. "Of course. I'm sorry, Naruto. You see, my daughter is a fangirl for weapons, especially the famous ones." Naruto laughed as well. "It's alright, it was nice meeting you too. I gotta go to team placement now, but how about I come by this afternoon, Tenten, and I'll you show my collection?" Tenten nodded up and down repeatedly. "I can't wait. See you then." Naruto left the weapons shop and Flash stepped his way to the academy. He took an empty seat and waited for the placements to begin. Later. "Okay, Team 1 will be. Okay, Team 7, Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, haha, take that Ino pig. And Naruto Uzumaki. Your Jonin instructor will be Kakashi Hitaki." Naruto waited with the rest of his team in silence. Knowing his knee-sand, this was gonna take a while, so he just closed his eyes and meditated. 2 hours later the door slid open. "You're late, Kakashi-sensei," Sakura screamed. My first impression of you guys? I hate you. Well, except you, Uto. Meet me on the roof. Naruto stood up and in a burst of blue flames disappeared. He reappeared in front of his Ni-san on the roof. Kakashi continued reading his little orange book, and Naruto pulled out a long, thin pipe filled with tobacco. Since when do you smoke, Uto? Kakashi asked, looking at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Since I found out I was gonna be teamed up with Duckass LeBruder and Howler-chan. Naruto deadpanned while lighting his pipe. Kakashi just smiled. A few minutes passed in silence with Kakashi reading his smut, and Naruto blowing smoke rings. Finally Sasuke and Sakura made it to the roof. Kakashi closed his book as the two took their seats next to their teammate. Okay, let's begin. I want you to introduce yourselves, tell me your likes, dislikes, and dreams for the future. Kakashi-sensei, could you go first to show us how it's done? Sakura asked. Sure, my name is Kakashi Hitaki. I like a lot of things. I don't feel like telling you my dislikes and dreams for the future? Never really thought about it. We only learned his name, thought Sasuke and Sakura. Okay, you Pinky, go. Sakura bristled at the nickname but continued anyway. My name is Sakura Haruno. Looks at Sasuke and giggles, I hate Ino Pig. My dream for the future is, looks at Sasuke, giggles and squeals. Great, a fangirl, thought Kakashi with a sweat drop. Okay, Whiskers, you're up. My name is Naruto. I like ramen, kenjutsu, fuinjutsu, Kakashi ni, and training. I dislike arrogance, people who judge others, and rapists. Kakashi flinches. My dream for the future is to become the best Hokage, and protect all of those who are precious to me. Kakashi smiles. You will, Naruto, I know it. Okay, Broody, you're up. Sasuke gave him a dirty look. I have many dislikes, and even fewer likes. I don't have any dreams, but I have an ambition. I will kill a certain man, and then rebuild my clan. Great, an Avenger and a fangirl. Deadpanned Naruto and Kakashi. Sasuke's so cool, thought Sakura. Okay, meet me at the third training ground tomorrow at 5 a.m. Oh, and don't eat breakfast, you'll just puke it up. Kakashi said with an smile before leaving in a shunshin. Don't listen to him. If you don't eat breakfast you'll have no energy and you won't perform well. Said Naruto to his teammates. Why would we listen to you, Naruto baka? Screeched Sakura. She was still pissed that Naruto made Sasuke look bad. Don't if you don't want to, just trying to help. Naruto walked to the edge of the roof and stepped right off. Sakura and Sasuke ran to the edge and looked over. Naruto was falling straight down head first, before his body rose up and he took off flying into the air. That was so cool. No, it wasn't. Naruto baka isn't nearly as cool as my Sasuke-kun. Meanwhile Sasuke was thinking, how did you get so much power, Dobi? Later, Naruto had picked Tenten up as promised, and after Tenten had thoroughly inspected each and every single weapon in Naruto's armory, had challenged the blonde to a kenjutsu spar. The blonde agreed and now they were facing each other in the center of the sparring ring. Tenten readied her sword, a Chinese jian with a red tassel. I may not be a master, but I think you will find my kenjutsu to be adequate. Tenten said with a smirk and a challenging look in her eyes. Naruto flashed a grin. I really hope so, Tenten-san, or else this won't be much fun. Tenten merely chuckled in response. Naruto created a seal-less shadow clone that stood between the two combatants. Are you two ready? The clone asked. The two sword-wielding shinobi nodded and the clone nodded back. Hajime. The clone dispelled and Naruto's Masamune was holding back Tenten's Jien in a show of sparks. Naruto forced the girl back and began dodging a flurry of sword swings from the laughing kunoichi. Naruto just shook his head and sidestepped and twirled behind her. He hit her in the back with the blunt side of his sword. Patience, Tenten. You must not rush in so hastily. Tenten in reply spun around with her sword in mid-swing. Naruto languidly parried. You must show more restraint, Tenten. Tenten grew determined and angry. She focused on her sword as it slashed about only to be blocked and parried by Naruto. Naruto, having had enough of this, went on the offensive. His sword blurred and Tenten struggled to block all of his strikes. Tenten leapt back and with the sword held horizontally, parallel to her head, thrust the sharp blade towards Naruto's chest. Rather than parry or dodge, Naruto jumped straight into the air and landed gracefully on top of her blade. Tenten looked up in shock to see Naruto staring down at her smiling. His sword Masamune pointed at her throat. Game over Tenten. Naruto hopped of the sword which Tenten let fall to the ground. The girl collapsed onto her knees panting, trying to regain her breath. I'm a failure. I'm never going to be a true weapons mistress, the girl said with obvious sadness in her voice. Naruto looked down at her and rested his hand upon her shoulder. Of course you will, Tenten. You just need some good training. The girl looked into Naruto's eyes, and then before the boy knew what was happening, she was wrapped around his legs. Please train me, Naruto-sama. Naruto's eyebrows disappeared into his hairline. What? Was his intelligent reply. The girl detached herself from his legs and took a submissive position on the grass, her forehead touching the ground. Please, Naruto-sama, you are a true master. I humbly ask that you take me on as your student in the art of Kenjutsu. Please teach me, Naruto-sama. Naruto looked at the girl for a few moments, thinking hard on the subject. Then he remembered 6 years ago when he asked his ancestors to train him. He knew had they said no, he would never be the warrior he was today. He thought back to the girls at the academy. All but Hinata were pathetic fangirls. Here was a dedicated kunoichi, who if ever in a Kenjutsu fight with a true master would surely die. Not to mention this would help in the future for his dream to be Hokage, and the girl would eventually spread his knowledge to any future students she may have. She could help him spread the teachings and revive the name Uzumaki. Yes, he would teach her. Naruto smiled and answered, how could I say no to such an enthusiastic and dedicated kunoichi? Stand up, Tenten. We will go see the Hokage together. If he and your sensei agree, then I will become your sensei. The girl glomped him, yelling out a string of thanks yous. But you must promise that you will work hard and follow all of my teachings. Also, any of my clan's styles and secrets must not be shared with anyone without my permission. Is that clear, Tenten-san? Tenten grew serious and determined. Of course, Naruto-sensei. Naruto beamed. I could get used to this sensei thing. The two set off towards the Hokage Tower. Hokage Tower. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage and proclaimed God of Shinobi, was currently growling and staring at his longtime nemesis, paperwork. Why the hell did I take this job again? He asked to no one in particular. The Anbu hidden in the room snickered at the old man's antics. He was give reprieve, however, when there was a knock at his door. Enter, he announced as the doors swung open to reveal Naruto, who strode into the office with Tenten in tow. The Sandaime raised a questioning eyebrow. What can I do for you, Naruto-kun? Naruto smiled at his surrogate grandfather. Hokage-sama, I formally request to train Tenten here in the art of Kenjutsu. The Sandaime looked at him a little surprised. Naruto, that's great, but with your current rank I'm not sure that's allowed. You could become her sensei and teach her in your off time, but you must be at least special jonin to take formal shinobi students. Naruto nodded, but then with a playful smile walked toward the Hokage. He bent down and whispered something into the old man's ear. Suddenly, with agility not commonly seen in a man of his age, the Hokage leapt the desk and grabbed his surrogate grandson by the shoulders. He shook him harshly, making Naruto look like a bobble-head doll. Tell me, damn you. Tell me the secret. If that wasn't bad enough, the old man dropped to his knees with hands in a praying pose. Please teach me, Naruto-sama. The Anbu burst out laughing and Naruto popped a vein in his forehead. Get a hold of yourself, Gigi. Naruto yelled. This seemed to do the trick as Hiruzen stood up, dusted of his robes and sat back in his seat. He coughed once before righting himself. Anbu, get me Might Guy. A few minutes after the Anbu left, Guy entered the room. You wanted to see me, Hokage-sama? Guy adopted a questioning look as he saw Tenten and Naruto standing in the room. Guy-san, Naruto here has something he would like to ask you. Guy looked even more curious as he turned to Naruto. Guy-san, I ask your permission to become Tenten-san's Kenjutsu instructor. She is a dedicated kunoichi, as you are aware, and with my extra training in conjunction with yours, I think she will become one of the best. Guy looked upon the two and then started crying big anime tears. He wrapped the two genin in a bone-crushing bear hug. Yosh, this is what youth is all about. How can I say no to my young student wishing to train even harder? Guy let the two free, much to their relief, before continuing. Naruto-kun, you have my permission. I've seen your skills and I know that you will be a great teacher to young Tenten-chan. May your youth burn with the intensity of 1,000 suns. Naruto's sweat dropped. I will Gai-san, I appreciate your support. Tenten bowed her head to her longtime sensei. Thank you so much Gai-sensei. I promise to work very hard to accomplish my dream of being Konoha's #1 weapons mistress. Gai and Naruto decided to work out a training schedule after Naruto got his own schedule from Kakashi, assuming Naruto passed the test that would take place tomorrow. Tenten and Naruto both filled out a form that stated that Naruto was her advanced Kenjutsu instructor, which Gai signed as well, being her Jonin sensei. After Gai left and the paperwork was filled out, Hiruzen turned to Naruto, anticipation rolling of in waves. So Naruto, I fulfilled my end of the bargain, so now tell me. What is the secret? He asked, leaning forward on his desk. 2 words: Gigi, shadow clones. The Hokage's eyes widened the size of dinner plates before he opened his desk and pulled out a box and key. He opened the box labeled, only open after discovering the secret to beating paperwork. Inside was a piece of paper with a red target with an arrow pointing to it, reading, hit head here. In the corner was a chibi Minato doing the victory sign. Upon seeing it, Naruto laughed his ass off along with the anbu. Hiruzen placed it on his desk and proceeded to bash his head against it. So what was the deal? Tenten asked, confused, as they left the Hokage building. Naruto looked at her and smiled. I made a deal that if he let me take on students whenever I want, I would tell him the secret to finishing his paperwork. Back in the Hokage's office, 3 of Hiruzen's shadow clones were filling out paperwork while the Sandaime himself was sitting back smoking his pipe while reading a particular orange book. Oh Kagome, you naughty little minx you. He giggled perversely with a blush spread across his face. Naruto was heading toward Training Ground 3. He had woken up early, showered, changed, and ate a healthy breakfast. He had 3 bento boxes sealed in his body and was whistling a happy tune. It was almost 5 in the morning, and when he arrived at the field he found he was the first one there. Field 3 was a lovely place. It was spacious, with plenty of surrounding forest and a wide open field behind it. In the center were 3 training posts, and directly in front of those was the memorial stone dedicated to all of the fallen Konoha shinobi. His parents' names were among the countless thousands carved into the polished slab of granite. Naruto sat behind one of the posts and entered into a state of meditation. Naruto's mindscape. Drip, 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 dank water fell from the pipes that ran along the walls of the sewer that was his mindscape. When he thought about it, it seemed less a sewer and more an old boiler room. He waded through the shin-high waters toward what would inevitably lead to the central chamber. All paths led to this chamber, no matter what turns and hallways you took. Finally, after a few moments, he came to the large gates of the Shiki Fusion Seal. He could hear deep guttural growls coming from behind the gate, and could feel the key, killing intent, full of a great malevolence, focused right on him. He showed no hesitation and no fear as got closer and closer to the massive gate. In truth, Naruto had come here often since his time in Uzu. Nearly every day he came in at least once to chat with his tenant. It always ended the same though. The great fox would curse and berate the boy until he gave up. Hey Kurama, Naruto said as he stared into the black void. He received his reply in the form of the Kyuubi bashing into the cage and trying to reach Naruto with his massive claws. Rahhhhhhh. Brat, I told you not to call me that. You have not earned the right to use my name. What the hell do you even want, you sniveling little ingrate? Naruto didn't flinch, or show any sign of weakness or offense. I'm sorry, almighty lord of the Biju. He said with sarcasm dripping off his tongue. Your name is Kurama, and I'm not going to stroke your already massive ego by addressing you with such titles. If you want, I can go back to calling you Fluffy-chan. Huh? Would my whittle Fluffy-chans like that? He said in a baby talk voice with a massive smirk plastered on his face. When I get out of here, kid, I will floss with your entrails. Why do you insist on bothering me? Your parents already doomed me to this hell. Why do you insist on making it worse with your annoying presence? Naruto pondered this question for a while. Then with full seriousness he stared into the massive red eyes of the 9-tailed fox. "'Cause I know what it's like to be all alone," Naruto said with no humor or sarcasm in his voice. The fox looked a little surprised but quickly shook it off with a snort. "Look Kurama, I know what it's like to hate. To be angry and want to watch the world burn. But I found family. I found friends and people I care about deeply enough to forget my hatred. The only person you've got for the foreseeable future is me. Like it or not, we're stuck together. I want us to get along. I want us to help each other, and one day I would like us to be friends, comrades even. I am going to find the bastard that is responsible for the night of my birth turning into such a clusterfuck. When I find him, I am going to make him pay for all of the suffering he caused, not just to me and my village, but to you when he put you under that genjutsu. My father couldn't defeat him, so chances are I will need your help. I want us to be able to talk and work together. I know that if the two of us teamed up instead of pretending the other doesn't exist, we could accomplish amazing things. Maybe then, if you prove to me that you're not the evil son of a bitch you pretend to be, I will find a way to give you your freedom. The Kyuubi had the decency to look shocked after that little speech. He kept replaying it over and over in his head, while trying to find any ounce of deceit. The problem was he found none. This kid was completely heartfelt and serious. Is he the one father spoke of? Well, Kurama, just think on what I said for a while. I will see you tomorrow, goodbye. Kit. The Kyuubi started, but it was too late. Naruto left his mindscape and returned to the physical world. The Kyuubi had some thinking to do. Training ground. Naruto opened his eyes and smiled. Maybe it wouldn't take as long as he once thought to finally reach the prideful Biju. That could wait, however, as he sensed right away that Sakura and Sasuke had just entered the training field. He stood up and stretched before waiting for them to approach. They each sat down and Naruto addressed them. Hey guys, so did you eat breakfast? He asked the two. Sasuke didn't even look up. He just pretended not to hear him, and Sakura just looked at him like he was an idiot. Naruto baka. Kakashi-sensei told us not to eat breakfast. Naruto rolled his eyes at the loudmouth fangirl. Yes, and I told you that that was not a good idea. Look, food equals energy. Energy equals better performance. You can't train on an empty stomach. Kakashi knows this. That's why he doesn't want you to eat. He's setting you up for failure. Do you even know what we're doing here? I do. I also know that my Nissan hasn't ever passed a Genin team before. Sakura and Sasuke both looked at him confused. What do you mean? Was Sakura's intelligent response. Naruto just shook his head. Never mind, Nissan will explain when he gets here. Look, listen to me or don't, it's you two who are going to feel like shit when this goes down. Here. Naruto unsealed two of the bentos filled with breakfast. He handed one to Sakura and one to Sasuke, before walking toward the memorial stone to find his parents' names. Sasuke examined the food before his stomach growled, as did Sakura's. Sakura blushed and Sasuke just shrugged before digging in, followed by Sakura, who loved to copy him. About 20 minutes later, Naruto walked back into the center of the field. He unsealed Zangetsu and Masamune and summoned 50 clones, all armed to the teeth with various weapons. He held Masamune in his standard reverse grip and hefted Zangetsu onto his shoulder. He smiled before, in a burst of blue flames, his yellow fox mask appeared on his face. Let's rock. His stunned teammates watched with rapt attention for the next few hours as Naruto systematically and without prejudice butchered his clones. He spun about, unleashing hell with Zangetsu, before attacking any clones trying to come into his blind spot with Masamune. He performed weaves, rolls, and acrobatics as he dodged and parried all of their feeble attacks. After he cleared through all 50, he summoned 100, then 150, then 250. Right now he had close to 1,000 shadow clones surrounding him on all sides. He stabbed Masamune into the ground and unrolled some of the cloth on Zangetsu's hilt. He wrapped his hand in the excess cloth before spinning the massive crescent blade like a windmill. His teammates watched in awe as he threw the large blade and cut through his clones. He spun and twirled, changing the direction and position of the large cutting windmill. After a while Naruto grew bored, so he threw the large blade into the air. All the attacking clones stopped and watched as Zangetsu soared straight up, only to be dispelled as Naruto flash stepped between them all, slicing them down with his mighty Masamune. After all the clones were gone, he caught the falling Zangetsu and sealed both swords away in a flash of blue flames. He turned towards the forest and pulled his fox mask to the side of his head. "How is that, Ni-san?" he asked with a smile. Sasuke and Sakura, still flabbergasted by the incredible show of skill, turned their attention to where Naruto was talking and watched as Kakashi stepped out of the forest clapping. "Very good, Ototo, I think you set a new record for yourself," he said with an eye smile. A few minutes later, Kakashi stood in front of the three-seated genin. Now for this test you must each get one of these bells from me. But Kakashi-sensei, there are 3 of us and only 2 bells, said Sakura with confusion. Kakashi eyes smiled. I'm glad you noticed, Sakura. Whoever doesn't get a bell will be sent back to the academy. Sasuke and Sakura grew wide-eyed and started to complain. But Kakashi-sensei, that isn't fair. Kakashi nodded. No, it isn't, but the fact is this is your final test. You are not yet genin. He was lying a little bit, because regardless of the outcome, Naruto would still be a genin. He just wouldn't be on a genin cell with Kakashi as his sensei. Your graduation from the academy was only to show us who has the potential to be a ninja. Out of all who graduated from the academy, only 9 shinobi will be selected. That means you have a 33% chance of passing and becoming a fully fledged shinobi. Quote, now you have 2 hours on the clock over there to get these bells from me. Whoever doesn't get a bell will be tied to a post, while the others eat lunch in front of them. He pointed to the 2 lunchboxes next to the clock near the memorial stone. He didn't hear their stomachs growl, so he raised his eyebrow. Did you 3 eat breakfast? Naruto smiled and his 2 teammates looked at Naruto. Yeah, Naruto brought breakfast for us. He said that you were setting us up for failure by making us hungry and tired. Kakashi stared hard at Naruto, who just scratched the back of his head and giggled. Kakashi just sighed. Well, he was right. Thanks a lot, Naruto. Okay, on the count of 3 you will begin. Oh, and remember, come at me with the intent to kill or you'll never get a bell. Kakashi said with his eye smile. 1, 2, 3. And they were gone. Sasuke was in a tree watching as the Jonin read his smut. Sakura was hiding in a shrub. Naruto was just gone. Suddenly Sakura felt warm metal wrap around her mouth and body and pull her backwards into the forest. She tried to scream and squirm free, but it was of no use. The same thing happened to Sasuke, and they soon found themselves in front of Naruto, who had chains coming out of his back, the same chains that were currently binding the fist of genin. I know what you're thinking. What the hell is this idiot doing? Well, I'm saving your asses from being sent back to the academy. The 2 tied-up ninja raised their eyebrows. Yes, you see, as ninja we have to learn to look underneath the underneath. We have to learn how to spot deception, and learn how to accurately deceive others. This whole test is a deception. The true goal is to teach us teamwork. Kakashi Ni is trying to pit us against each other by saying that whoever doesn't get a bell will be sent to the academy. In truth, even if we get a bell, it doesn't matter if we stab each other in the back in the process. Quote, think about it. Have you ever heard of a 2-cell genin team? Not, it's 3 genin and a jonin sensei. Again the 2 bound ninja widened their eyes. See, you know that I'm right. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to remove my chains, and you are going to be calm. Then the 3 of us as a team are going to come up with a plan to get the bells. Having said that, Naruto lowered the 2 no longer struggling ninja to the ground and withdrew his chakra chains. After some cursing and complaining, Team 7 came up with a plan to get the bells from their porn-reading sensei. Kakashi was walking around the center of the training ground reading his book. In reality, though, he was confused. Their chakra signatures disappeared a moment ago. I wonder what those 3 are planning. Naruto must be behind this. No sooner had he finished his thought when his danger senses went haywire. He rolled to the side and stashed his book. 3 kunai embedded into the ground where he had just been standing. Kunai, really? He looked at Sakura, who had thrown the knives. He regretted turning away from the kunai, however, when his danger senses told him turn back around. Once he did, he was forced to block an axe kick delivered by Sasuke, and duck a roundhouse kick thrown by Naruto. You hanged yourselves into kunai, which Sakura threw, very creative. He said with an eye smile, but then looked shocked as the Naruto in front of him dispelled to reveal Sakura using a henge. He turned back around to block Naruto, engaging him with the cornered fox style. Not to be outdone, Sasuke soon joined Naruto in fighting back Kakashi, who started having a difficult time. He leapt out of the way when Sakura threw some shuriken his way. He rolled to the side and instantly regretted it when he soon felt that there were 10,000 pounds on his back, forcing him to collapse face first into the ground. With great difficulty he picked his head up and saw that he was lying in the center of a complex ceiling array. What the hell? The Naruto that he had been fighting dispelled to reveal it had been a shadow clone, and Naruto walked out of the forest. It's my strongest gravity seal Ni-san. I drew it while you were distracted by my teammates and my clone. Naruto sent a chain out that collected the two bells. He threw one to Sakura and the other to Sasuke. The smiling Naruto and Sakura, and the smirking Sasuke then told Kakashi of Naruto explaining the true purpose of the test, then coming up with their plan. Kakashi smiled with obvious pride in his new students. Naruto deactivated the seal and Kakashi dusted himself off. After passing the three genin, Kakashi gave them each a list of dates and times to meet for team-building exercises and meetings, and told them he would meet them at the shinobi mission offices in the morning to receive their first D-rank mission. Before leaving them he left them with some final words. While those who break the rules of the ninja world are trash, those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. Hokage office. After leaving the training ground, Naruto went to see his Jiji to ask a favor. He was standing in front of the smiling Hokage, who after using shadow clones to complete his paperwork felt like he was 20 years younger. "So what can I do for you, Naruto-kun?" Hiruzen asked with obvious gratitude to his surrogate grandson. "Well, Jiji, I was wondering if you could give me a permission card to train in the Forest of Death. You see, it's the only training ground I can think of that will give me some privacy to work on some of my larger-scale destructive jutsus. Right now I'm working on something big." Hiruzen thought it over and when he couldn't think of any reason to say no, smiled and stamped a permission card that would allow Naruto unlimited access to the dangerous training zone. He had just handed it to Naruto when suddenly the doors were kicked open and a little boy wearing a skull cap and a really long blue scarf appeared in the office. "Old man, I have come to finally take that hat." The kid stepped forward with a kunai in hand and fell on his face. Naruto just sweat dropped. What the hell? Konohamaru stood up and rubbed his head. He looked up at the confused Naruto. "Hey, you tripped me," he yelled while pointing an accusing finger. A tick mark appeared on Naruto's head as he looked back at the boy. "You tripped on your own scarf, brat." Naruto deadpanned. "You call me a brat now, but you wouldn't if you knew the Hokage was my grandfather," said Konohamaru with his arms crossed and his head turned away. He believed Naruto was just like everyone else. No one besides his grandfather and uncle Asuma called him Konohamaru. No, everyone called him honorable grandson. He believed that Naruto would be just like everyone else, but that theory went out the window when Naruto replied. "I don't care if he's your grandmother, you little brat." Hiruzen sighed. "I'm sorry about Konohamaru, Naruto. He got it in his head that if he defeats me he will become the Hokage." Naruto smiled. "Don't worry about it, Jiji. Anyway, thanks for the pass." Naruto left the Hokage's office just as Ebisu was entering to stop Konohamaru from trying to assassinate the Hokage. "Jiji? Who was that guy anyway?" Konohamaru asked his grandfather. Hiruzen chuckled. "That Konohamaru is the Leaf Village's hero. That was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze." Konohamaru's eyes grew wide. Hiruzen had spoken many times about Naruto. It was no secret to anyone in the village that Naruto was their Jinchuriku, and just what he had been through and why. It was as commonly known now as his parentage. That was Naruto? Naruto was walking down the street. He was thinking about his life to this point, what he had accomplished and all of the things he had yet to accomplish. He had so much on his plate, it seemed. He had to meet up with Tenten later to discuss her training. He had his own team and training to consider. He had to start using his great-grandfather Rin's sword Kurakara, as he had yet to really cut loose with it. He had to build his own forge, and eventually he wanted to forge his own blade as well. He already had some awesome and legendary swords, but he wanted to create a few of his own. Swords that he could make legendary. He had to meet Ero Sennin later tonight. The old perv wanted to discuss something important with him. He just had so much going on. He had to go to the Forest of Death at some point now that he had permission so he could work on his secret jutsu training. Not to mention trying to rebuild his clan, defeating hatred in the world, and in the Kyuubi. And let's not forget finding that bastard and the orange mask. So much to do, so little time. So lost in his thoughts was he, that at first he didn't notice the tail that had been following him since he left the Hokage's office. Eventually, when he snapped out of his nagging thoughts long enough, he took notice. "You know you're holding that cloth the wrong way?" Naruto said without looking at Konohamaru, who was pretending to be a fence. This went on for a while before finally Konohamaru gave up and demanded that Naruto trained him. "Look kid, I already have way too much on my plate right now. I'm sorry, but now is not a good time to take on any more students. Konohamaru looked depressed. Naruto was about to move on, but Ebisu the special Jonin showed up. Honorable grandson, please come with me right this instant. Only with my special training will you be able to shortcut your way to becoming Hokage. Naruto stopped in his tracks. Ebisu-san, don't lie to the kid. There are no shortcuts to becoming Hokage Konohamaru. You can only achieve your dream, as noble as it is, through hard work and unwavering dedication. Naruto then turned to leave once again. I think I know what my student needs and doesn't need Naruto-san. Naruto didn't break stride. I'm sure you do, he said sarcastically. That explains why instead of training or studying he's trying to assassinate his grandfather. Ebisu grew a tick mark. It's not my fault he won't listen to me. Naruto stopped cold at that. He turned back around and walked right up to the two. How can a student listen to his sensei? If a sensei won't listen to his student, Konohamaru wants to become Hokage. The only problem is he wants it for the wrong reasons. Konohamaru is living in his grandfather's shadow, because people like you look at him and don't see Konohamaru. No, all you see is the grandson of a Hokage. I know what this is like, because even at this moment some people look at me, and they see my father, or worse yet they see the Kyuubi. Konohamaru, I can't become your sensei right now. That, however, does not mean that I can't at some point in the future. But if you would like a little guidance right now, follow me. Konohamaru and Ebisu followed Naruto to an empty training ground. Naruto stopped and looked at the two of them. Konohamaru, being Hokage is not the solution to your problem. Konohamaru looked down at his feet. To be Hokage is my dream. I want to be Hokage because I love and cherish this village. I want to do my best to protect every single person, civilian and ninja that lives in it. To be Hokage means a great deal more than petty recognition. Quote, it means that you must make the hardest decisions. Decisions that will directly affect every soul within Konoha. Sometimes these decisions will even affect the entire shinobi nations. You will be forced to decide punishments, promotions, and most importantly mission assignments. If even one of your ninja is not ready for the task you assign, it can mean death for an entire squad. Quote, you must be able to decide when a ninja is ready for a dangerous mission, and you alone must carry the burden of any and all consequences of their potential failure. Every action you make will have some effect on someone's life, either positively or negatively. You will have to send men and women out to kill. And many times the ninja you send out into the dangerous world we live in will not come home alive. Now, I ask you Konohamaru, can you honestly tell me that today you are ready to become Hokage? Ebisu looked hard at Naruto. He was not angry with him. In truth, he was quite impressed with the young man. He looked hard at him because it was so difficult to comprehend what could make a young man, only a few years older than Konohamaru, so mature. It was like being in the presence of a cage. Konohamaru looked shocked at Naruto. He had never been told the truth of what it meant to be Hokage. He now had a newfound respect for his grandfather. What a burden the man must carry. Naruto ni I am not ready yet to be Hokage. But I will train hard. I will grow strong. And one day, I will become Hokage to protect my village, and carry this great burden. So my friends won't have to. Naruto came forward and put his hand on the boy's head. I know you will, Konohamaru. I have no doubt that you will accomplish your dream. But you're gonna have to beat me to become Hokage, he said with a smile. In reply, Konohamaru smiled as well before pointing at his new big brother. Okay Naruto ni, from now on we're rivals. Naruto laughed heartily. You got a deal, Ototo. After leaving the newly enthused Konohamaru, who left with Ebisu for some real training, Naruto sought out Tenten at her team's training grounds. Naruto-sama. Naruto smiled at the enthusiastic girl. I told you Tenten, you don't need to call me that. It's just Naruto, or if you must, Naruto-sensei. Tenten blushed and giggled. Sorry Naruto-sensei. Naruto waved it off and looked at her two teammates who upon seeing him came over. Yosh, you must be Naruto-kun. Tenten has been talking about you all day. Tenten looked completely embarrassed. Lee, I have not shut up. Ah, so you must be Namikaze-sama, said a Hyuga with long brown hair. Tenten has informed us that you are to be her new Kenjutsu instructor, correct? Naruto nodded. That is correct Hyuga-san. I'm Naruto. The boy whose name turned out to be Neji nodded his head. Come Lee. let's leave these two to their training. Yosh, it was nice meeting you, Naruto-kun. Maybe next time we may spar? Guy-sensei has told us of your rather impressive taijutsu skills. I would like to try my hand at your formidable style. Naruto smiled and nodded. That sounds like a lot of fun, Lee-san. Maybe next time. Lee smiled and nodded before striking the nice guy pose and following after Neji. Sorry about those two, Tenten said in embarrassment. Naruto dismissed it. Don't worry about it, they seem interesting. Maybe I can get to know them at some point. Anyway, I got some free time now if you would like to begin your training? Tenten nodded enthusiastically. That sounds great, Naruto-sensei. Naruto nodded and the two walked into the center of the training field. Okay, Tenten. To begin, I brought a few scrolls. Naruto unsealed 6 Kenjutsu scrolls. In these Kenjutsu scrolls are the basic forms of styles for a variety of different swords. What I want us to do is pick a basic, yet balanced style for you to learn and build on. It's my hope that after you get comfortable with one of these styles, you will be able to easily alter it to fit the different sword types you use. From there I will help you adapt and crossover with other styles. But in the future, I want you to take all of the knowledge I give you, and create your own unique style. Does this sound good? Tenten couldn't be any happier. That sounds great, Naruto-sensei. I can't wait to begin. Naruto smiled at the girl. Okay, let's get started. Naruto spent a good few hours with Tenten picking a Kenjutsu style that fit her current level of fitness. She was lithe and acrobatic, so they decided on a style called Dance of the Water Dragon. It was a style that focused on fluid movements and a mix of aerial flips and spins when the more advanced movements came into play. It was great for wearing down and intimidating enemies. Tenten again chose a Jien for her weapon, and this style would fit great with the durable sword. In the future, with enough training, she could use this style with dual swords if she wanted to. Later, Naruto had just returned home. He walked into his house and was about to go to bed when he noticed Jiraiya sitting on his couch, looking at pictures of his parents. Hey Ero Sennin, I forgot all about meeting you today. What's up? Jiraiya seemed to snap out of his recollections and focused on the boy. Don't worry about it, Naruto. Look, I was wondering if you could do me a favor. Jiraiya spent the next hour telling Naruto about his former teammate Orochimaru. He then told him about the snake student Enko Mitarashi. He delved into the cursed seal of heaven, and that's what he had wanted to ask Naruto about. So you see, Naruto, I'm a master of Fuinjutsu, but you are the student of the three who practically invented the art. Not to mention the fact that you have Kushina and Mito's memories, and they were no slouches themselves. I was wondering if you could investigate into the cursed seal for me. Naruto then took a package of notes and pictures of the seal. That explains a lot. I know Enko. She was at my spar with Kakashi Ni. I thought I sensed a dark chakra on her that was not her own. Don't worry about it, Jiraiya, I'll look into it. That bastard Orochimaru may be good, but he isn't an Uzumaki. Jiraiya smiled at his godson, and after some much more pleasant conversation, bid him good night. After Jiraiya was gone, Naruto looked at the pictures of the cursed seal of heaven. Then he looked at the picture of Enko from her genin days. Don't worry, Enko, I'll help you get rid of that seal. That bastard won't have any more hold over you if I can help it. Naruto met his team in the early morning. They went to the mission assignment office and picked up a few D ranks. They spent the entire morning and a few of the afternoon hours weeding gardens, painting fences, walking dogs, and doing people's shopping. After they were done, Team 7 agreed to meet up tomorrow to do some more. Naruto went home and spent an hour cleaning his equipment and inspecting the seals that he used daily. His yellow fox mask had a transparency seal inside, so it didn't hinder his seeing ability. His swords Zangetsu and Masamune had unique gravity seals etched into their handles. Because of this, no ordinary shinobi could wield Zangetsu or Masamune. The seals were set to recognize Naruto's chakra, so the swords would weigh 3 tons to anyone else who tried to pick either of the swords off of the ground. Kurakara was a really unique sword, however. The sword could not be released from its scabbard without first channeling blue flames into the blade. Because of this, no one could use this sword without having the blue flame bloodline, which as far as he knew was on Rin and himself have ever had. After inspecting his weapons, Naruto sealed them away and decided it was time to begin 2 of his projects. Naruto sent 30 shadow clones into the village with plenty of ryo on hand to buy lumber and other building supplies. He would need plenty of stone, wood and mortar to build his forge. Naruto himself locked up his house and set off towards the Forest of Death to work on his jutsu training. Forest of Death. Naruto walked up the Chunins who handled admittance into the dangerous training ground. With a smile and a wave he handed over his pass, and after some surprised looks from the guards, he received his pass back and ventured into the forest. Naruto ran 6 or 7 miles into the forest before coming to a small glade. Any of the larger than normal animals he encountered he scared off with a potent blast of ki. Naruto sealed away his cloak and his vest before he set to work. He stood shirtless in the clearing and attempted to clear his mind. Gravity seals. Kai. Resistance seals. Kai. Chakra restriction seals. Kai. The ground he was standing on collapsed into rubble as his blue chakra shrouded his body and rolled off in waves after the sudden release of his built-up chakra. Birds took flight in fear followed by any would-be predators. Bits of rock and earth floated waist-high off of the ground, and the wind kicked up high in a spinning maelstrom. Naruto took a deep breath and willed his incredible chakra to calm down before forming a Rasengan in his left hand. He slowly started pouring wind chakra into the powerful ball of energy. The Rasengan started to change at first before it destabilized and imploded, sending Naruto into a tree. Ugh, shit, that hurt. Naruto stood up and tried again. But no matter how hard he tried he always got the same results. He could have spammed shadow clones into the clearing to help, but he felt that would dishonor his father who had tried for years unsuccessfully to add his element to the incomplete jutsu. No, Naruto would do this the hard way. Midway through his failed experiments Naruto decided to take a break from the Rasengan experiment. He summoned 75 clones and gave each their marching orders. 25 would work on his chakra control, 25 would work on his kenjutsu, and 25 would work on learning his father's taijutsu style, the hummingbird style. He loved his cornered fox style, but he wanted to broaden his abilities. He had come across his father's taijutsu style from his library after he first moved into his house, and after training a little bit in its katas, it seemed to resonate with him. While his clones were busy with their own devices, Naruto decided to try some awareness exercises. He summoned up a small army of shadow clones and gave them orders to throw kunai, shuriken, and to attack him with different weapons and swords. He tied a blindfold around his eyes and with a foxy smile and a "come on" motion, with his hand he breathed out, "Let's dance." His clones smirked back at their insane, blindfolded creator and charge. Meanwhile nearby, Anko Mitarashi was bored. Scratch that, she was super bored. So far today she had broken 3 prisoners into spilling all of their secrets, ate a shitload of dango, pissed off the general civilian population, and to top it off, scared the shit out of 2 Chunin-level shinobi who had made the mistake of trying to come onto her. All in all it was a good day. But right about now she was bored silly lounging around in her personal playground. Currently she was sitting in a tree chewing on her last dango stick when something strange happened. A twister of bright blue chakra exploded skyward about 2 miles from her location. She whistled to herself at the sight of the raging sapphire hurricane and smiled to herself. Now who the hell could that be? Not many people trained in the Forest of Death, and even fewer ever ventured as far as she did. There were too many unknown dangers lurking in the dark. Well, there goes my boredom, she thought with a smirk. Naruto. After some time of doing this dangerous form of training, Naruto picked up on the presence of someone hiding in the trees. Naruto dispelled his clones and turned his blindfolded head towards the person's direction. "Can I help you?" he asked. Anko Mitarashi licked her lips and leapt down from her perch. She had been watching the blonde shinobi for the past 45 minutes or so, and she had to admit she was impressed. She rushed to the clearing to investigate, and what did she find? She found Naruto, shirtless and working on his Rasengan. She had sat down in a tree branch to watch him, and she had to admit she liked what she saw. The kid was freakin' ripped. She sat there almost drooling over his 6-pack abs and sinewy arms. She was going to go out and introduce herself when it appeared he was finished with whatever it was he was working on. Then, he summoned his shadow clones and began all sorts of different training. She sat back down when he tied a blindfold around his eyes, and his clones started throwing pointy things at him. This kid has some serious balls, but it looks like I'm busted. Anko smirked and walked towards Naruto. Naruto recognized her chakra, specifically the dark, evil chakra that came from her cursed seal. He removed his blindfold and smiled at the beautiful Kunoichi. She's pretty fucking why. They both thought at the same time. Ah, you must be Anko Mitarashi. Naruto said with an extended hand and a smile. I've heard a bit about you. Rumor has it you are one tough Kunoichi. Anko shook the boy's hand and beamed. Yup, toughest bitch you're likely to meet around Konoha. And you're Naruto Uzumaki. From what I've seen already, you're no slouch either. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly and laughed. I'm not all that special, Anko-san. In a dull roar of blue flames, Naruto was redressed in his shinobi attire. Naruto continued to rub the back of head in slight nervousness. So, would you like to spar a little, Anko? Anko smiled, a little disappointment at the return of his clothes, but she wouldn't say that out loud. That sounds fun, Gaki. Later, Naruto and Anko spent a few hours sparring and chasing each other through the forest of death. After they were finished, and both laughing and panting, Naruto asked the beautiful snake Kunoichi if she would like to go and get something to eat. Are you asking me on a date, Foxy-kun? Anko teased with a seductive smirk. Naruto blushed and stammered. No, I was just wondering if you wanted to we could. Anko laughed at the flustered genin. Sure Gaki, why not? I am kind of hungry. So the two left the forest and headed out to Anko's favorite dango restaurant. The two ordered their food and spent a while eating and laughing and sharing stories. After the light seemed to fade, and nighttime descended onto Konoha, Naruto spoke up. So Anko, I had a lot of fun today. I was wondering if maybe we could do this again sometime. Spar in the forest, and then if you wanted I could treat you to some dango? What do you think? Only if you want to. Naruto said, growing increasingly flustered and embarrassed. What is wrong with me? Of course she must have better things to do than to spend time with some kid. I'd love to, Gaki. Anko said with a small smile, snapping Naruto from his self-deprecating thoughts. Really? He asked, surprised. Why not? I had a lot of fun today, and who am I to say no to free dango? She said with a laugh. Why, am I not good enough for you, Foxy-kun? She teased with a fake hurt look. No, that's not it at all, I was just, good. It's settled then, Anko said with a smile. Kami, he's so easy to embarrass. I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this kid. Naruto and Anko soon parted ways and Naruto headed back to his estate. His clones that he had sent to get building supplies for his forge had dispelled hours ago, so he knew tomorrow he had his work cut out for him. He undressed, took a shower, and climbed into bed. He reflected on his day, and couldn't help but smile when thinking back to his time spent with Anko. I really like her. I don't know what it is, but when I'm around her things just feel right. Naruto smiled again and soon drifted off to sleep. Meanwhile, across town, Anko too was reflecting on her day. That kid certainly is something. What is this feeling I get when he looks at me though? Something in me calms and everything just feels good. 3 months later. 3 months had passed since Naruto started sparring with Anko in the Forest of Death. Every night when Anko wasn't away on a mission, the two would meet up, spar, and chase each other through the dangerous forest. After they were done with their bouts, Naruto would take Anko out to eat either at her favorite dango stand, or sometimes even to Ichiraku's. In those 3 months they grew to be close friends. Naruto would work into the late hours of the night researching the cursed seal, and he had begun to make some serious progress. He didn't think it would take too much longer to find a way to remove it from the beautiful Kunoichi shoulder. In those 3 months Naruto never brought up her past with Orochimaru, nor did he bring up the fact that he had taken over for Jiraiya to find a way to remove the seal. He didn't want to get her hopes up until he was sure he could remove it for her. Subconsciously Naruto was beginning to develop deeper feelings for the snake charmer, and with any luck so was she. In the 3 months that had passed, Naruto had built his forge. The first sword he had created he called Basutasodo, or the Buster Sword as he liked to call it. It was a massive Zambato broadsword, about 6 feet long, about a foot wide with a single-edged blade. The blade was riveted in place to the guard and handle. The handle itself was a deep red with swirl designs. The sword was made of chakra metal, and had the same gravity seals as Zangetsu and Masamune. Naruto however had added new seals along the edge of the blades of both the Buster Sword and Zangetsu. He called them Tenketsu seals. These seals, when chakra was fed to them, would store up chakra. When Naruto swung the sword, while simultaneously forcing extra chakra into the seals, they would activate and release the built-up chakra in a devastating chakra beam. He called the move, Getsuga Tensho, and it was an impressive long-range attack. Naruto wasn't the only one however that was improving greatly. Tenten had improved a great deal under Naruto's tutelage and she was currently wearing resistance seals to build up her strength. She was making great progress and Naruto knew that in time she would be an excellent swordswoman. He was currently teaching her about weapons forging with her father, and Naruto decided that when she was good enough, he would help her craft her own custom swords to go with her style. Meanwhile, as far as jutsu went, Naruto still had not perfected adding his wind element to his Rasengan, but he felt that could wait for right now. He wasn't giving up, mind you. No, he worked on it whenever he could. He just felt that when he got it, he got it. He wasn't going to stress out or kill himself over it. Currently, Naruto and his teammates were in the mission hall standing before the Hokage. "Ah, Team 7, let me see here. Ah yes, for your next D rank, you will clean the kennels at the inns." Naruto stepped forward and cut his grandfather figure and Hokage off. "Hokage-sama, I was actually wondering if it may be possible to get a more difficult mission?" Naruto asked calmly. Hiruzen seemed to ponder the suggestion. He knew Naruto was strong enough for ranked missions and he was not the reason they were still doing D rank. No, he wasn't sure if Naruto's teammates were ready to do anything other than D ranks. Iruka was about to stand up and voice his concerns but Hiruzen cut him off. "Kakashi, do you think your team is ready for that?" he asked the Cycloptic Jonin. "They are indeed ready, Hokage-sama." Hiruzen nodded his head to the great pleasure of the relieved-looking genin. "Okay, I have a C-ranked mission available. You must escort a bridge builder to the Land of Waves, and guard him from thugs while he completes a bridge. Send in Tazuna-san." The door opened and a spectacled drunken old man, with a jug of sake in his grip, walked into the room. He looked at the genin and their sensei. "What the hell? I paid for ninja and you give me a couple of kids?" Duckass doesn't look like he could tie his own shoelaces without getting depressed. Bubblegum looks like she may faint at the sight of blood. Don't even get me started with blonde. He was interrupted from his observations however when he felt a something cold against his neck. He looked to the side to see Naruto holding Masamune against his throat. He looked back at the three genin and sure enough Naruto hadn't moved. "W, what the hell? How are you here, W, when you're still?" Naruto smiled at the man. "You see, drunkard-san, we ninja, no matter how young we may look, can do all sorts of cool things. Like remove your head from your shoulders with a flick of our wrists. Shall I demonstrate?" The Naruto who was standing next to his team dispelled in a cloud of smoke, revealing it to be a shadow clone. Ma, Naruto, please don't threaten our client," Kakashi said without removing his eyes from his porno book. Naruto just smiled at Kakashi. "Sorry, Ni-san." He resealed his sword and was about to walk away. He stopped however and grabbed Tazuna's sake jug from the man's hands, and took a huge swig. "Naruto," screeched Sakura, "you're too young to drink." Naruto just stared at the girl before deadpanning. "Old enough to kill, old enough to drink, gamble, and fuck." Sakura and Sasuke blushed and the Hokage and Kakashi just sweat dropped. "Okay team. Meet at the gate in an hour," said Kakashi before everyone went on their way. Naruto and the rest of Team 7 were walking down a dirt road on their way to Wave Country. Naruto was in front, followed by Sakura and Sasuke who stood on each side of Tazuna the bridge builder. Kakashi brought up the rear while simultaneously reading his porn. Naruto wore his now standard ninja attire, minus his sage cloak. He wore his trusty mask over his whiskered face. Both sides were framed with jaw-length blonde hair. Kakashi had commented to Jiraiya days before that the young ninja resembled Minato a great deal. "Sensei, is there any ninja in Wave Country?" Sakura asked from her place in the formation. "No Sakura, there is not. There are 5 large villages that make up the majority of the world's ninja population. Each of these villages' leaders, as I am sure you remember, are called the Cage. These 5 villages are Konoha led by the Hokage, Iwa led by the Tsuchikage, Kiri led by the Mizukage, Kumo led by the Raikage, and Suna led by the Cage. Aside from the Big 5, as they are commonly known, are numerous other small shinobi villages with their own shinobi forces. However, only the leaders of the Big Five are known as Kage. Wave, however, does not have its own military, but are bordered by Mist Country and Fire Country. Kakashi explained. Okay, but then why does everyone in Konoha call Naruto the grandson of the Uzukages? Naruto heard the question and decided to answer that himself. That's more of an honorary title more than anything, Sakura. But to explain that, we have to go back to the founding of Konoha. You see, a very long time ago, during the period before shinobi villages, commonly known as the Great Clan Wars, the world as we knew it was in turmoil. Clans from all over were fighting other clans for land, honor, and prosperity. In Fire Country, the two biggest clans and the bitterest of rivals were the Senju and the Uchiha. These two clans were at war constantly for a great many years. One day, a shinobi of the Senju who was fed up with the constant warring left the clan to follow his passion for knowledge, Kenjutsu, the sealing arts, and the pursuit of peace. This man banded together with a few members of the Senju and a few members of smaller clans and formed what was later called the village of Uzushiogakure, in the land of the whirling tides. This man then changed his name and he with his group of shinobi founded the Uzumaki clan. The village was led by the head of the Uzumaki clan throughout the years as their king. So for a very long time the village was a monarchy. Over the years the war between the Senju and Uchiha continued. Finally, however, Hashirama Senju, the new clan head of the Senju, and longtime rival and childhood friend Madara Uchiha, the newest clan head of the Uchiha, decided that the blood feud had gone on long enough. Hashirama and Madara came together with many of the other warring clans and founded Konoha. While the village was being constructed, Hashirama decided to visit his cousins the Uzumaki. The current clan head was my great-great-grandfather Sephiroth. Hashirama wanted the Uzumaki to come with him to Konoha and rejoin their family the Senju. Instead, he discovered that Uzushiogakure was thriving and had been living in happiness and peace ever since its founding. Also, the land was no longer a monarchy. Sephiroth had decided that instead of a royal family they would be led by one central figure, chosen by the people to lead. Hashirama loved this idea, and moreover fell in love with his distant cousin and the sister of Sephiroth, Mito Uzumaki, a kunoichi and seal mistress of unprecedented skill. Anyway, Sephiroth turned down Hashirama's offer to move the clan to Konoha. However, he noticed that Hashirama and Mito were quite taken with each other, so he proposed a marriage. This marriage would not only tie Uzu and Konoha together, but would also retie the Senju and the Uzumaki clans as allies forever in blood. Anyway, after the marriage was conducted and Konoha was built, Hashirama brought forth the idea created by Sephiroth to let the people and the clan heads of the Shinobi Council decide who should lead the village. After much deliberation, the choice was left between Hashirama and Madara. The people chose Hashirama and he was called the first Hokage, or Fire Shadow. Madara, however, was angered. He believed that if the Senju ruled the village, the Uchiha would forever be slaves to them. He tried to rally the Uchiha to revolt, but they denied him. The Uchiha too were tired of the constant war. Madara fled the village and tracked down the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the strongest of the Biju, who was currently resting in the forests of Fire Country. Naruto took a few seconds to catch his breath as he heard Kurama give a deep growl within his mind. He looked back at his audience to find that they were staring at him with rapt attention. Even Sasuke seemed genuinely intrigued with the story so far. While Sasuke knew the story of Madara Uchiha, the entire bit about the Uzumaki was both new and interesting to him. After sufficiently catching his breath, Naruto continued. Anyway, Madara discovered the Kyuubi as he was resting and asked him to help him lay waste to Konoha. But the Kyuubi refused. At this, Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura widened their eyes considerably. The Kyuubi can talk? They all asked. Naruto's face vaulted and the Kyuubi began bashing against his cage. Let me out, Naruto. I am gonna fucking eat these ignorant monkeyes. Naruto dusted himself off and leveled a glare at his team. Of course they can fucking talk. Despite what most people believe, the Biju are not demons, nor mindless killing machines. They are beings made of incredible amounts of chakra that were given consciousness by one of the most incredible human beings to have ever walked this earth. For hundreds of years they roamed the continent's content to let humans be. But like all things that are different or misunderstood, humans feared them and their incredible power, so they began scorning and attacking them. The Bijus in turn defended themselves from their attackers, which only increased the fear of the humans. The Kyuubi himself was once a gentle creature before he was consumed by the fear and hatred of our race. Naruto noticed his team understood, but still seemed quite surprised. Who was it that created them, Naruto? Kakashi asked. He had noticed the reverence in which Naruto talked about their creator. That is a longer and even more complicated story for another time, Kakashi. And I still haven't finished my current story. Kakashi nodded his head. I'll be sure to ask later then. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, so the Kyuubi turned Madara down. So Madara used the power of his Sharingan to place the Kyuubi into a very powerful genjutsu, and then placed a summoning seal upon him. He ventured to what is now known as the Valley of the End, where he met Hashirama and his wife Mito. Hashirama knew that Madara would have to pass by the valley to get back to Konoha. He ushered his wife to stay out of the way while he met his once best friend. He urged Madara to come back to Konoha with him. Madara refused. He claimed that Hashirama would oppress both he and his clan. He told Hashirama that after he killed him, he would raze Konoha to the ground and destroy his quote, treacherous clan, and start anew. He summoned the hypnotized Kyuubi and together they fought Hashirama to the death. However, Hashirama knew from the Sharingan that were spinning in the Kyuubi's eyes that he was under Madara's control, so after he pushed Madara to a standstill he subdued the Kyuubi with his Mokuton and broke both the Genjutsu and the summoning seal. With the Kyuubi out of the fight, Hashirama killed Madara. After the long and destructive fight was over, the Kyuubi was still left subdued. Hashirama and Mito were afraid that after the Kyuubi awoke he would take his anger for Madara out on Konoha, and in his wrath destroy the village and the peace that came from its creation. So Mito decided to seal him within herself. Now what you may not know is over the years that led up to this point, many had already tried to seal the Kyuubi. However, no non-living vessel could contain his power, and any human vessel who tried before died soon after. You see, Biju chakra is incredibly potent. It is basically toxic to humans. The Kyuubi's chakra, however, is more powerful in both its abundance and its potency. Any human who tried to contain him before Mito had died either from exploded coils or melted coils. Sometimes even both. Mito had hypothesized, however, that an Uzumaki would be able to survive the sealing. This is because Uzumakis not only have an incredibly vast life force, oftentimes living to be in their hundreds, but they also had an incredibly advanced chakra network, meaning larger coils and larger reserves, and they also have an incredible gift for adaptability. Anyway, Mito successfully sealed the Kyuubi within herself. However, the two did not have the greatest relationship. Naruto muttered at the end, "Goddamn right we didn't. The infuriating old bitch." Naruto's eye twitched at the comment, but he let any retort go with a deep sigh. Anyway, no one but the Hokage, Mito, and the clan elders that made up the village council knew that Mito was the Jinchuriki. The shinobi later knew that someone held the Kyuubi, but the actual identity of his vessel was always an S-rank secret known to few. That was true with my mother, and would have been true with me, but Gigi, like my father, wanted me to be seen as a hero, so he made it public. He, however, underestimated the level of hatred and ignorance humans have toward things they do not understand. But I digress. Kakashi visibly winced, and even Sasuke and Sakura looked sympathetic. Tazuna was too, but he didn't have a clue what Naruto had been through in life. So not too long after Madara's defeat, word spread of Konoha and its Hokage. 4 other villages formed, and together with Konoha they made up the Big Five. The villages adopted the notion that the leader should be chosen by the council and the people of the village, and they decided that together these leaders would be called the Kage, just like Hashirama. That is the birth of the 5 Kage. My grandfathers, the leaders of Uzu, were then given the honorary title of Azukage, not only because Sephiroth created the idea for the election system that they all used, but because they recognized the power of Uzu and its people. Uzushiogakure did not have nearly the population of any of the major villages, but they made up for quantity with quality. Also, they were both revered and feared for their knowledge and use of the arcane art of seals, and their mastery of kenjutsu. The team and bridge builder nodded in understanding. But what happened to them? In the academy they talked about the Uzumaki as allies of Konoha, but we didn't go too deep into how they were destroyed or why. Sasuke this time asked. Naruto nodded, all the while frowning, visibly saddened at the choice of topic. Uzushio was a deciding factor in Konoha's survival and subsequent victory during the First Shinobi World War. Their use of seals both in and out of combat scared the hell out of their enemies, and Uzu itself was virtually impregnable. Mito used her knowledge of seals to build many of Konoha's defenses, which made laying a successful siege to Konoha almost impossible. In fact, many of the defenses that are still in place today in Konoha were built either by Mito or based on Uzumaki seals and barrier jutsus. This fear of the Uzumaki's skills, not to mention their growing prosperity and population, made many of their enemies understandably nervous. Okay, I get that, so what happened? Tazuna asked. Sigh, the village was attacked. But I thought you said the village was impregnable? Sakura asked. It would have been. However, years before the start of the Second Shinobi War, Iwa embedded sleeper cell agents in both Konoha and Uzu. The Tsuchikage knew that both Konoha and Uzu's defenses needed to fall before attacks on the villages could be successful. So these agents, who were young teens, even children when they were sent to become shinobi of our villages, were ordered to get positions in the barrier unit, T&I unit, and even Anbu Black Ops. One night towards the end of the war, sometime after the Nidaime Hokage died, and Saitame Jiji was appointed Hokage, the defenses of Uzu fell and all hell broke loose. Uzu was surrounded on all sides by the conjoined forces of Iwa, Kumo, and Kiri. Paper bombs that were placed in the most strategic places within the village soon went off, and Uzumaki civilians were slaughtered on sight. Women and children included. When my grandfather Ichigo went to send distress messages to Konoha, he found all of the messenger hawks were dead. One of his Anbu reported in that all of the ninja working in the barrier division and the messenger division were murdered and the defenses had been visibly sabotaged. Then reports of Uzu ninja turning on their comrades soon came in. It was an inside job, he realized, so he ordered a group of civilians who had survived the initial attack to be brought to him. It was a small group, and my mother, his daughter, who was only an academy student at the time, was among them. He gave her the mission of a lifetime. He made 2 copies of the Uzumaki Scroll of Seals. One was for clan eyes only, and it contained all of the clan's jutsu, seals, ken and taijutsu stances and styles, and our greatest clan secrets. The second contained many of our seals and barrier jutsus along with a long list of kenjutsu. The first scroll was to be kept by my Ka-san, and the latter scroll was to be given to the Saitame Hokage, one of my grandfather's closet's friends, as a gift, and as a countermeasure in case Konoha was attacked. Before he kissed my mother goodbye, he gave her a note for Hokage Jiji explaining the situation, and the likelihood of double agents within Konoha. He rallied all of his surviving ninja and attempted to fight back the invaders of his home. By dawn of the next day, Uzu was destroyed and all of the shinobi and civilians who were inside the village at the time were dead. Some Uzumaki were taken prisoner by Kumo, but what our enemies didn't realize was an Uzumaki would rather die than become a slave or breeding stock, so committed via suicide seals on their person. Why did they take prisoners? I thought you said they were to be killed on sight. Atiri Sakura asked. To contain the Biju. The Raikage had somehow discovered that Mito was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and that only an Uzumaki could contain him. Kumo was and still is in possession of the Nibi, and the Hachibi, the latter of which they had always had trouble containing. He realized that if an Uzumaki could safely contain the Kyuubi, then they could also contain the slightly weaker, but still incredibly powerful Hachibi. The plan was to contain the Hachibi and Matabi in an Uzumaki, then forcefully use them to attack Konoha, kill Mito and reseal the Kyuubi, giving them 3 Biju, 2 of them being the 2 strongest of the Biju. However, no one knew that my grandfather had my mother and the other refugees spirited out of Uzu with the information of the double agents within Konoha. After Hokage Jiji got the letter, he searched through all of our shinobi and weeded out the spies. They were all interrogated and executed. Come the planned day of the invasion of Konoha, the combined armies of Kumo, Kiri, and Iwa found that Konoha's defense system quite operational. Star Wars. P. Led by a very pissed-off Hokage Jiji and an older yet, even more pissed-off Mito Uzumaki. Konoha had decimated their forces and the invasion failed. The war ended soon after and Iwa, Kumo, and Kiri lost. However, they had succeeded in the near extinction of my clan. My grandfather had the last laugh, however, because he sealed the clan's library, treasury, and armory before he met them on the battlefield. And even more importantly, a few Uzumaki survived, his daughter among them. They may have destroyed Uzu, but the Uzumaki still live on. This is the reason why our Jonin wear a red version of my clan's emblem on their uniforms. It's to be a constant reminder of the sacrifice my clan made, and the dedication Uzu had to its sister village Konoha. Naruto finished his story as a single tear fell from behind his fox mask. Any questions? He asked to the solemn group following behind him. They didn't ask many questions, and the journey continued with more pleasant conversation taking place. However, Sasuke contemplated heavily on everything Naruto had told them. We are much more similar than I thought. Do no. Naruto. Hours later. Naruto, about the Kyuubi. Sakura started. What is it, Sakura? Naruto asked, his curiosity piqued. What's your relationship like? Everyone else was interested as well. Naruto, while walking, couldn't help but reflect on the change his relationship with Kurama had underwent the previous night. Flashback. He was standing in front of the cage that housed Kurama in the center chamber of his psyche. He had not visited his tenant in quite a while. He thought that after their last discussion, that the powerful Biju needed some time to ponder his words. It's been a little while since my last visit, Kurama. There was no reply, and to anyone else it would seem that Naruto was talking to a black void. I stand by what I said before. I want us to work together. Have you given any thought to my proposal? Suddenly the darkness of the cage cleared a bit and the massive fox revealed himself. Ninjin, you are certainly an interesting one. But you look here. I am not your friend. I will work with you because it suits my needs, and may be beneficial to me in the future. However, the first moment you show any sign of weakness, or make me look bad as my Jinchuriki, I will cease this arrangement. Is that clear? Naruto nodded his consent. Kurama then continued. For this alliance to work, however, you must do a few things for me. First and foremost, you must kill that bastard in the orange mask. Secondly, you must change this dump you call a mindscape. It is your domain, so you have total power here. Lastly, you must give me access to your senses. I cannot help you if I don't know what is going on in the outside world. Are my terms agreeable? Naruto smiled a small but true smile at the great fox. Yes they are. Naruto concentrated, and soon the walls of his mindscape started to crack. The water drained and the floors began to crack as well. Suddenly the room expanded and the walls exploded. There was blinding flash of white light that both occupants had to close their eyes for. Cautiously the Kyuubi opened his eyes and was shocked to see what had once been a dark, dank sewer was now an expansive plain with rolling hills. Lush green grass surrounded him below, and above was a dark blue sky, filled with drifting clouds. The massive field was surrounded on all sides by forest, and he could hear birds chirping somewhere. He looked into the sky and was surprised to see two moons, one full and the other crescent. His cage grew and grew, and finally it was less a cage, and more a massive dog kennel. It was big enough that he had plenty of room to move about in it. Kurama looked at the smiling Naruto and then closed his eyes and laid his head on his massive paws. This will do, Kit. Naruto nodded his head and then he summoned a great stone dais out of the ground. It was a massive marble structure with a small set of steps. Naruto bent down and put his hands on the dais. He mentally conjured a seal that represented his senses. The seal sat in the center of the stone tablet, and Naruto asked Kurama to pour a bit of chakra into it. The fox did so, and when his chakra touched the seal it began to change. After the seal had been altered, Naruto made the dais sink back into the ground until it had disappeared. There you go, Kurama. My senses are now linked to your chakra. Whatever I experience will now be experienced by you in real time. You and I, however, can both shut off this mental link whenever we want. That way I can block out any private moments I don't want shared, or you simply want to sleep. The fox nodded his head and closed his eyes. Good, we have an accord then. Now get out of here. I grow tired. Present time. We have an agreement. He keeps me alive, and offers me both advice and access to his chakra. In return I do not treat him like some animal, or try and dominate him. Also I am to work hard to be seen as a strong and competent shinobi. Why the last one? Kakashi asked from behind his book. It's the old, if you look good, I look good, situation. As his Jinchuriki, my reputation affects his reputation. Naruto's eyes snapped open. There was a noticeable puddle not far down the dirt road he and his team were walking on. The only problem was it hadn't rained in a few weeks. It's a genjutsu kit, Kurama told him from inside his mind. Naruto internally hummed in agreement. Naruto placed his hands behind his head as he walked. He used Anbu hand signs to Kakashi to alert him of the hostiles ahead. Kakashi put his book away and stuck his hands in his pockets. He walked to the front of the team and stood next to Naruto. Kakashi pulled his book out again, and brought his free hand under his chin where he flashed signs to Naruto. Let's play it cool. I want to see who their target is. Naruto let his hands fall into his pockets and tilted his head to his knee-san. The puddle was still a little ways away, so Naruto took Kakashi's place at the back of the formation. Sakura was completely oblivious to the situation, as was Tazuna. They simply thought Kakashi had wanted to walk in front for a while. Sasuke was on edge however as he read Naruto's hand signals. As soon as the team walked past the puddle, two shinobi rose from it with a dangerous glint in their eyes. The two shinobi each wore a single big, clawed gauntlet on one of their arms. One of the shinobi chuckled as he threw his partner through the air. They wrapped their barbed chain around the seemingly shocked Naruto and pulled tight. Naruto! Naruto! His teammates shouted as what looked to be body parts and gore fell to the ground. Sasuke and Kakashi leapt into action. Sasuke threw kunai at the chain connecting the two ninja together, effectively pinning it to a tree. Kakashi launched a snap kick at one of the shinobi's faces, causing him to launch back and the chain to detach from both of the shinobi's gauntlets. The shinobi who was kicked in the face righted himself in midair, and both he and his teammate sped towards Tazuna. Kakashi grabbed one in a chokehold and smashed his elbow into his head. Sakura took a defensive stance with a kunai in hand, hoping to defend against the armed assailant. Sasuke rushed in front of her, much to her delight, but before the ninja got any closer however, a golden chain wrapped around his neck and pulled him back into Naruto's outstretched hand. The ninja was about to look up before an elbow came crashing down on the back of his head, sending him to dreamland. Naruto, you're alive. Sakura, Sasuke, and Tazuna looked to see remnants of a shattered log resting where they thought Naruto had died. Of course, he used the Kawarimi Jutsu to escape their chains but used a Genjutsu to make it seem as though he hadn't. Sasuke thought to himself. Naruto dropped the unconscious ninja to the ground, took off his mask and smiled at his teammates and client. Kakashi strolled up to his students merrily and dropped his opponent onto the ground. Good work everyone. He smiled at his team. Naruto smiled as well before he and Kakashi grew serious. Tazuna? They both started at the same time. The two Jonin-level ninja looked at each other with surprise before smiling at each other. Turning back to the nervous bridge builder they continued. We need to talk. They both finished. Later, Team 7 was currently walking through a forested area. After Tazuna had told them of the Land of Waves' current situation after being taken over by the evil business tycoon Gato, the team had decided to see the mission through to the end. After being showered with thank yous from the old drunk, the team met up with his contact who ferried them from the Land of Fire to the Land of Waves. As they were walking down the dirt path, Naruto suddenly whipped a kunai into the bushes. He sent a shadow clone to investigate, and found a white rabbit that was visibly freaked out. A white rabbit, but its fur should be brown. This rabbit must have been raised indoors away from the sunlight. This rabbit was used as a substitution. Naruto and Kakashi both thought to themselves. Naruto, it's just a helple. She was cut off however when Naruto and Kakashi both turned to see a massive Zanbato hurling towards them. Get down, yelled Kakashi. Naruto however unsealed his buster sword into his hand, and deflected the Zanbato into a nearby tree. A shinobi dropped onto the embedded sword and studied his opponents. Kakashi of the Sharingan, he said as he looked at the famous copy ninja. His eyes passed to masked Naruto for a second, before focusing on the blonde's Zanbato. He smirked. Hey, nice sword kid. He looked back at Kakashi. Anyway Hitaki, I'm here for the old man. Give him up and I'll let you and your brats walk out of here alive. Kakashi readied a kunai in his grip before answering. Zabuza Momochi. Demon of the Hidden Mist, a rank nuke nen. I'm sorry but I will have to decline. He said as he raised his headband up revealing his Sharingan. Oh, the Sharingan already? I'm honored. Well, if you won't give me the old man we're gonna have to do this the fun way. Zabuza dropped off the sword pulling it with him. and landed not far away from the group of Konoha nen. Manji formation, protect Tazuna. And stay out of this. None of you are ready for this kind of fight. Except you Naruto, but the less Zabuza knows the better right now. Zabuza strapped his sword to his back and stood straight and still. He brought right arm to a 90-degree angle and his right hand into the seal of confrontation. His left arm was raised straight above his head. Ninpo. Kirigakure no Jutsu. Ninja art. Hidden mist jutsu. Be careful. Zabuza is a master of the silent killing technique. Kakashi told his team. What's that mean, sensei? Asked a frantic Sakura. It means if we're not careful, Zabuza will kill us before we even realize it. Replied Naruto. Seems Blondie gets it, said a voice that was seeming coming from everywhere. There are 8 places on the human body that can lead to an instant death: the larynx, spine, liver, lungs, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, and heart. What's your preference? This guy's killing intent is unreal. Is this what a fight between Jonin is like? It's even worse than his. I can't take it anymore. I need to end this feeling. Sasuke thought to himself as he slowly raised his kunai to his own throat. Calm down, Sasuke. I won't allow any of you to die. You hear me? I will not allow my comrades to die, whispered Naruto. Sasuke quickly calmed down, before a chilling voice whispered from behind them, too late. Naruto didn't hesitate, with incredible speed destroyed Zabuza's water clone with a well-placed kunai thrust. Another Zabuza appeared a while away only to be destroyed by Kakashi. Kakashi was then stabbed by Zabuza only to disperse into water as well. You're good, Hitaki. To be able to copy me even in this mist is impressive. You truly are worthy of your moniker as the copycat nen. Zabuza suddenly appeared in front of Kakashi with a downward sword strike. Kakashi blocked it with a kunai and suddenly the two were back at it. Sparks flew everywhere throughout the mist as the two were constantly in deadlock. Zabuza got fed up with this constant back and forth, so the next attack he threw was followed up with a chakra-enhanced kick to Kakashi's unprotected stomach. The blow propelled Kakashi backwards through the air until he crash-landed in the nearby body of water. Something is wrong with this water, it's almost heavy. Oh no. Suiten. Suiro no Jutsu. Water style. Water prison jutsu, Zabuza exclaimed. Kakashi was trapped in a dome of chakra-enforced water. He couldn't escape and only had maybe 10 minutes before he ran out of air. This is bad. I have no doubts Naruto can beat him, but not without revealing his heritage. It's inevitable, I suppose, but I was hoping it wouldn't be for a while. Naruto, you're in charge of the team. Take the client and run. Naruto broke formation and stepped forward. Zabuza had let the mist clear up so he could see Team 7 and they him. You know I can't do that, Kakashi-sensei. What would they think if I left you here to die? What would he say? Naruto, you don't have to do this, you know you'd be in danger if. We both knew it was inevitable. The timetable has just been changed is all. Remember what you taught me? Taught us? Those who break the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. Isn't that right? You're more than just my comrade, and no way in hell am I gonna let some eyebrow-less freak kill you. Naruto finished as Zabuza grew a tick mark. What are you two jabbering on about? You really expect me to believe some no-name genin can defeat me, Kakashi? Kid, you're not worth shit until you're in my Bing book. Zabuza finished with a sneer. Unfazed Naruto turned his head to address his team. Protect Tazuna. With that he stepped forward, sealed away the Buster Sword in a flash of flames, and unsealed Zangetsu. Zabuza froze, his eyes widening upon recognizing it. How do you have that sword? Kakashi decided to answer for his Ototo. His name is Naruto Uzumaki, and he is the Prince of Whirlpool. That sword is one of his birthright. Zabuza looked shocked. Uzumaki, you're the son of the red hot-blooded habanero, and the yellow flash, aren't you? You're the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Naruto nodded his head, before sealing his mask away. Yes I am. And I see you recognized my grandfather Ichigo's sword. The fact is I'm quite proficient in Kenjutsu. I think it would be fitting to fight a fellow swordsman such as you, Momochi Zabuza. Zabuza laughed. Well, I will certainly have fun taking that sword from your dead hands, brat. Naruto smiled. That's not going to happen. First things first though, you're working for Gato? Zabuza nodded. Well, I have heard about my brother Yagura, and his bloodline civil war. Zabuza narrowed his eyes, and his team just looked confused. I hear you tried to assassinate Yagura. I assume then that you were part of the rebel faction that is trying to reclaim the village hidden in the mist? Zabuza glared at the blonde. What's your point, brat? My point is I have an offer for you. Zabuza looked intrigued. I wish to fight you. Swordsman to swordsman. If you win, I will give you Zangetsu, and double whatever Gato is paying you, and you will leave Tazuna alone. Zabuza smirked. And if you win? Naruto smirked as well. When I win, I will still pay you double whatever Gato is paying you, plus a good percentage of the money from his hideout, after I kill the little fuck. And again, you will leave Tazuna and his family alone. So is it a deal? Zabuza thought it over for a second, but something was confusing him. Why would you still pay me if you win? Naruto grew somber. Because, I support the rebels in their attempt to reclaim their freedom. Yagura, the Mizukage may be my fellow Jinchuriku, but what he is doing is wrong. All he is doing by committing his horrible deeds, is causing pain and suffering to innocent people, and making life even harder for the rest of the Jinchuriku. Zabuza nodded his head. It's a deal then. I will tell you this however, if you try to renege on our deal I will kill you, your team, and Tazuna. Naruto nodded. You have my word. Regardless of the outcome of our fight, you will be paid. Consider it a gift to the rebels from the Uzumaki clan. Zabuza smirked. And can you call your friend out please? Zabuza's eyes widened and Team 7 just looked confused again. Haku, an androgynous-looking teen, wearing a Kiri Hunter Nin mask appeared beside Zabuza. Yes master? Stand back, if his friends interfere, kill them. Haku nodded and jumped away from his master. Zabuza let Kakashi out of the water prison, and he slowly walked past Naruto on his way back to the team. As he walked by Naruto whispered to him, Ni-san, whatever happens, do not interfere. Kakashi nodded. He trusted his Ototo, and he knew he could handle himself. Whenever you're ready brat, Zabuza said with a feral grin. Naruto smiled back. What sword should I use? Zabuza looked confused until Naruto summoned Masamune, Kurakara, and his Buster Sword, and stabbed them each into the ground. Zabuza's eyes widened to extreme proportions. That's. Yes, said Naruto. Masamune and Kurakara. I possess the 3 legendary swords of the Azukages. My grandfather, great-grandfather, and great-great-grandfather's swords. Even Naruto's teammates looked surprised and confused. Kakashi-sensei? I don't get it. What's the big deal, they're just swords. Said Sakura. Kakashi's eyes smiled at the ignorant girl. You stupid little brat. These swords are legendary. Each one was forged and wielded by an Azukage. Your teammates' grandfathers were the 3 greatest swordsmen to ever live. Each of those swords alone are priceless. But with all 3 their total amount is insane. If the kid ever sold those swords he would be the richest man in the entire shinobi nations. Screamed Zabuza at the young Kunoichi. Tazuna, Sakura, and Sasuke looked completely shocked. However I don't recognize that other sword. Added Zabuza. Naruto smiled, and picked it up before answering. This Zabuza is Basutasodo, the Buster Sword. I forged it myself. Going along with tradition this is my sword. The sword of the Prince of Uzu, I guess you could call it. Again Team 7 looked surprised. He made that Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi nodded. Yes Sakura. The fact is, there is a lot that none of you know about my Ototo. Zabuza was grinning like a madman. Naruto resealed all of his swords with the exception of his Buster Sword. He picked it up as if it was the lightest thing in the world and got into his stance. His yellow fox mask reappeared on his face in a blaze of blue flames. Zabuza at once let out all of his chakra and killing intent into the air. His body was shrouded with chakra that formed a giant Oni mask behind him. Sakura, Tazuna, and Sasuke started to shake and shiver at the horrifying display of power. Gravity seals. Kai. Resistance seals. Kai. Chakra restriction seals. Kai. The ground around Naruto caved in, and everyone except Kakashi, Zabuza, and Haku had to struggle to stay standing as Naruto's oppressive chakra shrouded his body, and bled into the air in a massive maelstrom of power, that blew away any remaining mist. I'm ready now Zabuza-san. Come get some. In a burst of flash step Naruto was upon Zabuza, who had to use both hands to hold back the Buster Sword. Zabuza pushed Naruto back and the two quickly began attacking each other with gusto. To everyone but Haku and Kakashi it was too fast to follow. All they saw were sparks flying. Once in a while Zabuza and Naruto would appear, swords locked together before one of them pushed the other back and they disappeared again. Naruto was having the time of his life. This was the first real challenge he had had since sparring with his ancestors. Zabuza was going all out, and so was he. The two quickly increased their already fast pace, and Kakashi soon had to rely solely on his Sharingan to follow the two wild swordsmen. This is incredible," said Tazuna, eyes wide and hands shaking. Sakura nodded her head dumbly in agreement. Sasuke however was impressed, but also a bit envious. How does he already have so much power? I need to have this power too. I am an Uchiha, the elite of the elite. I need to be this strong if I'm ever going to stand a chance against Itachi. Haku was having thoughts of her own. This boy is indeed strong if he can match Zabuza-sama. I'm thankful that I don't have to fight him. He seems like a good person. I wonder what it is he fights for. Meanwhile Zabuza was having his own thoughts. This Gaki is something else. I haven't had so much fun since sparring with Kisame. The fighting shinobi were unrelenting in their attacks, a constant flurry, rapid swings, sudden blocks and powerful kicks. Not once did the other look away from his opponent. That damn mask is infuriating. I can't read him at all. Hey Gaki, how about we kick this up a notch? Naruto nodded. I thought you'd never ask. Naruto said with some humor in his voice. Water style. Water clone jutsu. Suddenly there were 5 water clones of Zabuza attacking Naruto. One ran up from his left. Naruto shifted his Buster Sword into his left hand, and summoned his Kurakara into the other. He attacked at the real Zabuza with his left hand, and after Zabuza blocked it, he spun around and sliced down the water clone with Kurakara. Leslie summoned up 4 shadow clones, each with a Buster Sword, who broke off to attack the charging water clones. He resealed Kurakara and quickly had to use both hands to hold back Zabuza's guillotine sword. Sparks flew everywhere as the two swordsmen and their clones fought on. The sword fight went on for another 10 minutes, and now the two swordsmen stood across from each other on the water. Zabuza was looking worse for wear. The clones were long gone, and Zabuza's chest was a myriad of cuts and gashes. None were too severely life-threatening, but they hurt like a bitch. He was breathing visibly hard as well. Naruto himself was sporting a few gashes, and his mask had a nice shallow scar across it. His breathing was a bit labored as well. Naruto then decided this had gone on long enough. Zabuza-san, as much fun as this has been, I think it is time we ended this. I really hope you can dodge this, cause the truth is, I've never used it in combat before. Everyone watching looked curious, Zabuza included. Suddenly Naruto's sword glowed blue as he lifted it in the air with both hands. Getsuga, Tensho. Naruto swung his body and the sword down in a diagonal slash. A massive, blue chakra fang was expelled from the blonde sword. It rushed at Zabuza, who held up his sword to shield himself. The chakra fang hit him head on and blasted him back into a tree. Zabuza opened his eyes with a groan. His sword, which he was still holding in front of his face, suddenly grew a wicked scar before it broke in 2 pieces. Everyone watching had to pick their jaws of the floor as they looked at the destruction from the powerful attack. Holy shit! Screamed Tazuna, at the upturned earth. Remember when Ichigo first used the Getsuga Tensho against Urahara? Haku was crouched next to her master in an instant. Zabuza-sama, are you alright? Cough, cough. Yeah, I'm fine. Kami, Gaki, you did a number on me. You win, a deal's a deal. Later, after Haku had thoroughly checked out Zabuza, and the two swordsmen were bandaged up, the two men shook hands. Naruto unsealed a scroll and handed it to Zabuza. It contained about 2 million ryo. Zabuza said it was too much, but Naruto insisted he take it. It's for the cause, he said to the grateful mist shinobi. Zabuza and Kakashi then came up with a plan. They decided that at the end of the week they would all meet on the bridge. They would stage a fight, and when Gato no doubt showed up with more of his thugs, they would kill the bastard. Naruto asked Zabuza for the man's broken sword. He said once they got in town he would find a forge and repair it for him. Naruto was to meet up with Haku in the forest outside of town in a few days to give her the sword for her master. After all the plans were made, Tazuna led Team 7 to his house where they were currently eating dinner. Tazuna explained to the team the story of Kaiza, and the heroic stepfather's death, after Inari ran upstairs depressed. After the saddening story, however, Tazuna lifted the mood of the room by recounting the events of Naruto's fight to Tsunami. "That was amazing, Naruto. A really great fight," said Tazuna, who had just finished telling the story to an impressed-looking Tsunami. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and chuckled sheepishly. "Hey, thanks. I'm just glad I finally got a chance to test myself against a true swordsman." Kakashi's eyes smiled. "Ototo, I'm so proud of you. Not only did you defeat an A-ranked missing nin, you also averted conflict. You made a deal that ended us from having to really fight to the death with Zabuza, and the money you gave him could potentially save many innocent lives in the Mist Civil War. Your parents would be proud." Naruto looked down at his food with a small smile on his face. "Thanks, Ni-san, that means a lot. So we take out Gato at the end of the week," Kakashi stated to his team. Suddenly Tazuna's grandson Inari was looking at the gathered shinobi. "You're all gonna die," he said as if it were a fact of life. "Inari," yelled Tsunami. "Gato is too powerful, he's going to kill you all." Everyone was quiet. "You stupid ninja, you probably all have cushy lives at home. You don't know what it's like to suffer. You don't know the pain we've gone through." Sasuke glared hard at the young boy, and Naruto, who had his hair shadowing his eyes, started laughing humorlessly. Inari looked pissed, and everyone else looked strangely at Naruto, except for Kakashi, who looked down somberly. Naruto raised his head and looked at Inari with such powerful intensity that Inari gasped and took an unconscious step back. "We don't know pain, you say? We don't know what it's like to suffer? While it's true your life hasn't been easy, at least you have a mother and a grandfather that love you. You have food on your table. Your life seems pretty good to some of us." Kakashi here lost his mother when he was young, and his father not long after. Then, he lost both of his teammates, and years later the man he looked up to as his father figure. Sasuke's own brother executed his entire family. "My father and mother died on the night of my birth. My father gave his life to seal the Kyuubi no Yoko into my body. At the age of 4 the orphanage I lived in kicked me out into the streets. For 3 months I lived in an alleyway and ate food out of a dumpster, before the Hokage found out what happened. Every week I was beaten, some nights to the brink of death. This however intensified on my birthdays, where the beatings got, especially gruesome. On my 5th birthday, after being cut and burned, I was, well, it doesn't much matter." By now Sasuke had his head down, as did a pale-looking Kakashi and Tazuna. Kakashi even more so, because he knew what Naruto was about to say. Sakura was teary-eyed, as was a shocked-looking Tsunami. "So you sit there and tell me that we don't understand suffering? Kid, your life is sad, and I truly sympathize, but remember this, someone always has it worse. Your father was murdered by Gato, and Wave lost hope. It's sad, and I am sorry for your loss. However, you still have your mother and your grandfather, who are both suffering just as much as you are. You however dishonor both of them when you act the way you have been. Your father lost his life fighting for the freedom of Wave. He stood up to Gato, and what do? You sit here and whine about how sad your life is. If you want your life to be better, change it. If you want something, you fight for it, and if you want to protect someone, you protect them. That's what your grandfather is doing right now. He's risking his life for you and your mother. He came to Konoha to hire us, knowing that he might not make it back alive. He is a great man, like your father. You however are a coward, like Gato." With his speech finished, Naruto stood up. "I gotta go work on Zabuza's sword, don't wait up." After Naruto left, Sakura asked the question that was on everybody's mind. "Kakashi-sensei, Naruto's life. It wasn't that bad, was it?" Kakashi looked at the girl, still looking downcast. "No, Sakura, it was worse. Naruto has suffered more than anybody I know because of his Jinchuriku status. It's still amazing to me that he can still function like a normal human being. Anyone else would probably be in catatonic shock after the mental and physical trauma he endured at what was supposed to be the happiest days of his life. Hell, most people would have released the Kyuubi and let it destroy the village. But no, Naruto is still as bright and happy as he was when he was young, albeit much stronger, as you have seen." "He wasn't going to say what I think he was he?" Tsunami asked after a second of hesitation. A tear dropping from Kakashi's lone eye as he turned his head away from her was his answer. Inari ran upstairs to be alone, and Sasuke left to go training. He had said, Tsunami, Sakura, and Tazuna spent the next few hours asking Kakashi about Naruto, and listening to different stories about the boy. Chapter 12. Liberation. Naruto had found a forge in town that he paid the owner to use. It disgusted him how Gato had turned this nice community into the slum that it was today. Children were constantly tugging at his clothes begging for food. He gave them what he could, and he even gave out what Ryo he had left on him, after paying off Zabuza, and buying access to the blacksmith's forge. He Hiroshined to his house to get more Ryo, and plenty of chakra metal, and Hiroshined back after sending a clone to tell the shocked, yet proud Hokage of the team's current situation. After he got back and caught his breath from using the time, space ninjutsu over such a long distance, he began his work. While repairing the broken sword, he infused chakra metal along the blade. After that was done, he broke out his sealing supplies and added a few seals. The first would allow the sword to repair itself with the iron found in blood. Anytime the blade was introduced to warm blood, the iron would collect and store into the seal. Anytime a crack or break formed, the iron would leave the seal and solidify in the crack. It was really a revolutionary seal, so he made sure to add it to his own swords. After he completed the task of fixing the guillotine sword, he decided to forge a katana. He figured it would make a nice gift for Haku, and he figured the teen's master would teach him the basics. After a few days the sword would be ready. It was to be made with chakra metal, and the blood repair seal was added to it. He bought the nicest sheath he could find from the blacksmith, and painted it a dark blue color. After he was done his work, he looked at the time and saw it was very late. He still wanted to take his mind off the situation with Inari, so he decided against returning to Tazuna's home. He walked into the forest and unsealed Kurakara. He summoned 1,000 shadow clones and decided it was time for a good old-fashioned battle royale. He summoned his fox mask into place and shrouded himself and his sword in blue flames. Showtime. The next morning, Haku was walking through the forest when she came upon a strange sight. Naruto, still masked, was passed out in the center of a clearing. All the trees around were splintered and gashed. The beautiful-looking girl walked up to Naruto, basket in hand. "I'm so glad I don't have to kill him," he mused to himself. He leaned down and was about to wake Naruto. As soon as his fingers were a centimeter from Naruto's chest, she felt a sword touching his neck. Haku gasped and retracted his hand. Naruto sat up slowly, and who he recognized to be Haku, he ripped off his mask and apologized. "Oh Kami, I'm so sorry." He quickly sealed his sword and apologized to the amused girl. "It's okay, I shouldn't have snuck up on you like that." Naruto smiled, and offered his hand. "We never were properly introduced. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. So what were you doing sleeping out here, Naruto-kun?" Naruto chuckled a little bit. "I was blowing off some steam, I guess you could say." Haku was about to inquire as to what made him angry enough to cause so much destruction when he was cut off. "Hey, I finished Zabuza's sword early." He unsealed the sword and presented it to Haku along with a sealing scroll. Haku thanked the boy and sealed the scroll. She tucked it into her kimono. Naruto and Haku spent the next few hours talking. Naruto, for some strange reason, told his life story to the girl, who by the end of it was crying. For some reason her eyes just told him she could relate, that she could be trusted. Haku in turn told her life story to Naruto, about her parents and her Hyuuden bloodline, and explained that she was saved by Zabuza. She explained that she thought of Zabuza as a father, but regardless if the feeling was mutual, in the end she was a tool for Zabuza to use. Naruto was a bit pissed off that the nice girl could think so little of herself, but in the end Haku wouldn't budge on the subject. "Do you have anyone who is precious to you, Naruto-kun?" Naruto smiled at the girl. "Yes, I do. Why do you ask, Haku-chan?" "To me, one becomes truly strong when they fight to protect that are precious to them." Naruto beamed at the response, and nodded his head. "Yes, Haku, you're right. A person becomes truly strong when they fight for the ones they love." Haku smiled back, happy that someone agreed with her belief. "That is what Zabuza is to me, Naruto-kun. He is my precious person, and I would give my life for him, if it meant he would live to be happy." The two shinobi shook hands after some more conversation. Both believed that they had found a lifelong friend. 6 days later, Naruto spent the entire week spamming shadow clones to help Tazuna rebuild the bridge after he finished Haku's katana. He even had clones apply seals all along the bridge that would prevent it from running down, or weathering. He added some seals to add extra strength so it could hold up against even low-level jutsu and low-grade exploding tags. Kakashi trains Sakura and Sasuke in water walking, having been taught tree walking shortly after becoming a team, while Naruto had clones protecting Tezuna's house, as he himself protected Tezuna daily. After the two genin had finished learning water walking, they advanced to learning a few low-level jutsu. Finally the day had arrived. Naruto made a contingency of shadow clones to watch over Tsunami and Inari, while he and his team escorted Tezuna to the bridge. The day before, Tezuna had told all of his workers not to come in for the day. When they got to the bridge, they were greeted to the sight of Haku and Zabuza standing in the center. Fog covered the bridge from onlookers and Team 7 came to a stop in front of the two mist ninja. "Gaki, you did an excellent job with my sword, I have to tell ya." Naruto smiled at the man. He quickly summed up the seals he added, and the infusion of chakra metal into the blade. Zabuza was really impressed with the work. "Care to test it out?" Naruto asked with a smirk. Zabuza gained a feral grin. "Most definitely." The two crossed blades once again. Meanwhile, Haku asked Sasuke if he would like a spar. Sasuke took it as a chance to test his development, and soon Sakura, Kakashi, and Tezuna were witnessing two epic battles. 20 minutes later, Sasuke was wiped, and Haku was a little winded herself. Zabuza was breathing heavy, and sported shallow cuts and gashes. Naruto hardly seemed winded, though his clothes were a little cut up, and his chest was bleeding a bit. "I guess that's 2 Naruto-sama and 0 Zabuza-chan." Naruto laughed. Zabuza grew a popped vein, but then laughed it off. "You're right, Gaki. You are skilled with that sword. It's really too bad you weren't a mist shinobi. I would have been honored to make you my successor." Naruto nodded and smiled. "The honor would have been all mine, I assure you, Zabuza Momochi." Naruto bowed to the man. Zabuza smiled and bowed back. Suddenly they heard tapping at the end of the bridge. Zabuza dispelled the mist to reveal Gato and 200 henchmen. Meanwhile, the Naruto clones at Tezuna's house were in one of the bedrooms playing cards. "I wonder how it's going over at the bridge?" asked one of the clones. Another answered, "Just shut up and deal Yubaka." The clone was about to retort, until he heard glass breaking downstairs. The clones nodded and leapt into action. They climbed out the windows and covered the front and back of the house. A Naruto clone looked through one of the windows to see Tsunami being dragged out crying by two men with swords on their hips. Inari sat in a corner crying. The Naruto clones were about to jump into action before Inari bolted out of the house screaming for them to release his mother. The youth had taken words to heart, and decided then and there he was going to fight for someone he loved. The thugs drew their swords and were about to cut down the young boy in front of the screaming and crying Tsunami. They brought their swords down, only to hear metal clash. Naruto stood before the amazed Inari, Masamune holding off the thugs' attacks. "Naruto Nissan." The Naruto clone chuckled. "Hey, the hero is supposed to show up at the last minute, Databio. Now, you guys made a real big mistake trying to hurt my Ototo." He quickly killed the two and sealed their bodies away for later disposal. Back on the bridge, "Look at this, boys. The baby demon couldn't get the job done." The gathered thugs laughed with their boss. "What's the matter, Zabu-chan? Can't deal with a couple of brats?" Zabuza laughed in reply. "These brats aren't exactly normal, Gato, as you will see in a minute." "Bah, kill them all. I was gonna kill you anyway, Zabuza. Then sell that little whore of yours to one of my brothels. On second thought, keep the whore alive, boys, her and that cute little pink-haired bitch." Zabuza, Kakashi, and Sasuke were about to step forward but they were frozen on the spot by the killing intent leaking from a very pissed-off Naruto. "Filthy pigs, like you disgust me," said Naruto as he lifted his head to reveal to the shocked crowd, Team 7 included, his demonic-looking features. His hair had grown longer and spikier. His canines elongated and his whisker marks thickened and darkened. His eyes had slit and turned crimson, and his lips turned a blackish color. Red chakra shrouded his body as his nails turned into long black claws. "I'm the demon you should have been wary of." 2 golden chakra chains burst from his lower back, each shrouded in the Kyuubi's chakra. One held Masamune, and the other held Kurakara. Naruto unsealed Zangetsu in his right hand, and in his left hand was the Buster Sword. "Naruto," stuttered his teammates. Haku was shocked and a little frightened, and two words floated across Zabuza's mind. Such power. Don't worry guys, I'm completely in control of my emotions. This is me, using the fox's power Ni-san, not the other way around. Kakashi visibly relaxed. Let's show him Fear Kit. Tear them apart, screamed Kurama from Naruto's mind. Naruto summoned his fox mask into position over his face. Let's rock. Naruto whipped his arms over his head and swung his mighty swords. With a Kyuubified cry of Getsuga Tensho, he unleashed hell upon his enemies. Two massive black Getsuga Tensho outlined in red, surged toward the group of thugs. When it hit, everyone in its path was obliterated. Naruto didn't stop though. He flash-stepped forward and began slaughtering them all. Dead bodies littered the opening of the bridge. There were about 100 thugs left. Naruto grabbed Gato by the neck, and threw a Hirishin Kunai back over to his team. He reappeared in a flash of red. He's using Kyuubi's chakra. He knows his father's Hirishin? Asked Zabuza to Kakashi. Kakashi nodded his head. And the Rasengan. Zabuza paled, and suddenly felt a hell of a lot better about losing twice to the young ninja. Sasuke, Naruto said in his still demonic voice. Why yeah Naruto? Feel free to handle the rest of them if you want. Sasuke nodded, then smirked upon seeing the shitting thugs. When they saw the Uchiha coming instead of Naruto, they suddenly gained back some of their courage. Stupid move. Sasuke, joined by Kakashi, finished off the weaklings. 50 however escaped onto a boat and were trying to flee. Naruto was having none of that however. He flew straight up into the air and hovered above the boat. He sealed away his swords and cancelled his chakra chains. Fire style. Fire dragon jutsu. He flew through hand seals and suddenly a massive purple fire dragon nose dived into the boat, vaporizing any passengers. 3 days later, Team 7 was standing on the newly finished bridge about to leave. Zabuza and Haku were there as well, along with the entire village of Wave. Naruto Nissan, you really have to leave? Naruto chuckled and ruffled the teary-eyed boy's hair. Yes Ototo, I really have to leave. But this isn't goodbye forever. I will be sure to drop by if I am ever in the area. But I have something for you. Naruto pulled out a necklace with smaller-sized Hirishin Kunai on it. Protect your mom and grandfather with everything you have, but if you ever truly need my help again, throw this kunai and I'll be there in a flash. Naruto said with a smirk. Inari happily put it on. Haku Zabuza, I have one for you too as well. He gave his new friends a similar necklace with a full-sized kunai which they put on immediately. I also made you this Haku-chan. Naruto unsealed a beautiful katana. Its sheath was dark blue like its handle. Stylized on the sheath were white flowers which petals looked like snowflakes. Hanging from the handle was a small silver chain and hanging from it was a small jeweled snowflake. Use this to protect your precious people. Make this sword as legendary as the person wielding it. Her name is Soda no Shirayuki, take good care of her. Haku accepted the sword with great reverence. She is beautiful Naruto, thank you, I will. After everyone had said their goodbyes, Team 7 left Wave. The last thing Zabuza had said to them was, Gaki. You're gonna be famous someday soon. Tazuna was currently deciding what to name the bridge. I know, said Inari. The Great Naruto Bridge. Everyone cheered in agreement. They would name the bridge for the young shinobi who liberated them, and gave them back their hope and their courage. As it turns out, Naruto, before killing Gato, had taken the man to his mansion where he made him sign over all deeds, titles, and documents to Tazuna. He recovered millions of ryo, which he divided among Tazuna and the village, and Zabuza. Naruto then gave all the deeds and titles to Tazuna, who was now the majority landholder of Wave Country. Tazuna had given his people all of their money and land back. Then Gato was executed publicly, before Naruto made the detestable man sign over Gato Corp. To him. Naruto gave the entire land of Waves a small stake in the multi-billion ryo company. He then promised them all that the cost of the A rank was more than paid in full. And that concludes my mission report, Hokage-sama. Kakashi said with a small sigh. After returning to the village, Team 7 had been dismissed for the week. Kakashi and Naruto then went to the Hokage to be debriefed. After the two had concluded their report, Hiruzen nodded. Hiruzen then had shown the bingo book entry to the two of them. The entire village was now buzzing about the young special genin and his defeat of Zabuza Momochi, and his subsequent hero status in the Land of Waves. Well Naruto, I hope you are ready for the increased danger you now face. Once word reaches Iwa that you know how to perform Hirishin, which I'm sure will be soon if it hasn't happened already, someone may try and assassinate you. Naruto nodded. I understand Gigi, and don't worry, it's been an inevitability that some of my father's enemies would try and retaliate against me for his deeds. I'm more than prepared to defend myself. Hiruzen smiled and nodded. I know you will Naruto. I wonder how Onoki is going to react though. Meanwhile in Iwa, what? Screamed Onoki the Tsuchikage. He had just been handed a new bingo book, depicting a young blonde that so reminded him of one of his country's greatest enemies. He didn't hate Minato Namikaze so much anymore however. He understood that it was war, and Minato was just doing his job. The fact was he himself had done, and ordered much worse. No, what made him scream to the heavens was the fact that the man's son, whom he had heard was dead had resurfaced, and somehow knew the Hirishin, Minato's most famous and in Iwa, reviled jutsu. On top of that, the boy was a fucking Uzumaki. He had thought that the powerful clan had been all but eliminated. If the boy was looking for revenge for his dead clan, Iwa may be in some hot water. Are you sure that this is accurate? Onoki asked the Jonin who brought the book to him. The Jonin nodded swiftly. Hi Tsuchikage-sama. The Tsuchikage sighed. Well that's just wonderful. Alert all shinobi that they are not to retaliate against this. Naruto Uzumaki. We need to tread carefully here. The last thing we need is another fourth shinobi world war, especially if this boy is anything like his father. Is that clear? The Jonin nodded, though visibly disappointed. Hi Tsuchikage-sama. Here is a you conniving old bastard. Well, things will certainly be interesting from here on out. Onoki thought with a frustrated snort. Back in Konoha, those thoughts aside, is there anything else worth mentioning? Asked Hiruzen while puffing on his pipe. Kakashi proceeded to nudge Naruto in the ribs. Tell him Naruto, Kakashi said with an eye smile. Naruto responded by sheepishly rubbing the back of his head and giving a foxy grin to his surrogate grandfather. Well, you see I kind of own Gato Corp. now. Naruto said, the smile never leaving his face. The Sandaime blew pipe tobacco across his desk as he started coughing up a lung. What? Naruto, do you know what this means? Hiruzen asked with wide eyes. Yes Gigi, it means my clan and by proxy our village now has full unlimited access to the assets of the largest trading company in the entire elemental nations. I believe a council meeting will be in order to discuss what this means for the village as a whole, but if everything works out the way I hope then Konoha won't have to worry about the state of its economy for a very long time. Naruto finished with a grin. Kakashi and the Hokage wore proud smiles as well. You just keep surprising me Naruto. The Hokage said with a soft and affectionate tone. It's no problem Gigi. Anyway before the council is informed of this I think you and I should go over some of the preliminary logistics. But before that, here is Gato's black book. Naruto then proceeded to place a large black file on the Hokage's desk. Contained inside is every single one of Gato's operations, legal or otherwise throughout the entire elemental nations. I think one of the first things we should do is rank and submit missions, which I will pay for as the company's new CEO, to mop up any illegal operations within Fire Country. There is no doubt in my mind that there are more villages like Wave that Gato had destabilized for his own agenda. Taking care of these issues would go a long way toward public relations for Konoha, and in turn bring in more missions. Plus it may help foster better trade routes and such between villages, as is the case with Wave Country. Naruto finished with a deep breath of air. Hiruzen smiled at the young man before him. Just sitting here listening to him he was reminded so much of Minato, young Ichigo too as a matter of fact. I fully agree Naruto, and I'll get right on that. Hiruzen replied with a warm smile. First though I think it may be pertinent to change the name of Gato Corp. Any ideas Ototo? Kakashi asked from his seat in the office. Naruto flashed his trademark smile and nodded. How about Whirlpool Corp? After the meeting with the Hokage, Naruto sought out Tenten to continue the girls' Kenjutsu training. Tenten had hounded Naruto with questions about his fight with Zabuza as soon as she saw him, and now after sufficiently answering her questions Naruto was sitting under the tree in his backyard. He had his eyes closed and a long tobacco pipe in his mouth, smoke floating towards the sky. Tenten was training in her kenjutsu under the instruction of one of his shadow clones nearby. You're progressing excellently, Tenten. In time I am sure you could become a powerful sword mistress. Naruto spoke from his spot in the shade. Tenten blushed at the compliment. The bun-haired girl couldn't believe how lucky she was to have a real Uzumaki sword master like Naruto as her teacher, especially considering she didn't come from a clan. She still had stars in her eyes over the fact that Naruto had defeated one of the 7 swordsmen of the Hidden Mist twice, and was now in the bingo books. While his student was lost in her thoughts, Naruto soon got lost in his own. Things have been going so well since I've returned here from Uzu. I had a feeling they would, but I never imagined I could feel so content. Sigh, I wonder if this feeling of peace will last though. I have a strange feeling that a storm is brewing somewhere on the horizon. Oh well, that just means I better enjoy days like this while I can. I wonder what Anko is up to. I should probably see her soon, maybe take her out for dinner before tonight's council meeting. Naruto's thoughts were interrupted from continuing any further by the giant orange fox in gut. Mortal, as fun as it is to listen in on you fantasizing about that scantily dressed woman with the rather sadistic pastimes, I think you better pay attention to your panda-haired student. She has been trying to get your attention for some time now. Naruto in reply to his tenant looked up and noticed a rather frustrated-looking Tenten, who was tapping her foot repeatedly and trying to control her twitching eyebrow. She was failing miserably though. Hehehe, Naruto said while rubbing the back of his head and smiling a sheepish smile. Eyes closed and all. Something I can help you with, Tenten? Naruto asked while repacking his pipe. Sigh, yes, there is, Naruto-sensei. I've been trying to ask you if you could help me identify any weaknesses in my form. Tenten replied. Nothing wrong with your form from where I'm sitting, muttered Kurama. Shut it, Kurama. Naruto intoned to himself. What? I'm just saying, as far as kunoichi your age go, this one has a rather nice body, especially when compared to the pink-haired chimp on your team. There are so many things wrong about what you just said. Naruto internally deadpanned. How is that? Kurama replied as he closed his massive eyes. Okay, first off, you are a centuries-old Biju and you're commenting to me, a 13-year-old boy, about the body of a 14-year-old girl. Naruto deadpanned. Secondly, from what I've gathered from my mother and Mito's memories, let alone your own memories, you're generally pretty apathetic towards humans unless you were caged in one of us or off destroying some random village for whatever reason. That, however, was before you decided that you hated humanity as a whole. As I am sure you already know, Kit, I never just randomly destroyed any village. With the exception of Konoha, for which I was mind-controlled into attacking, the only other time I attacked a village was either because they attacked me first, or I had problems sleeping. Problems sleeping? Naruto deadpanned. Sigh, you know this already, Kit. I will remind you though, since you seem too dense to remember on your own. Hey, Naruto indignantly replied. Anyway, as you should know already, each one of the Biju was granted a special gift. Collectively, these gifts were the special abilities of the Gyubi. Shukaku could control sand, Matabi could control hellfire, etc., etc. My gift, however, was the ability to sense negative emotions over vast distances. This was gifted to Mito through her seal, which happened to be a bit weaker than you or your mother's. Anyway, hatred is one of the most common negative emotions you humans like to throw around, and it's also one of the most powerful. How would you like it if every hour of every day you felt the collective rage, hatred, jealousy, scorn, and any other negative emotion you can think of, from all over the damned continent? Oops, kind of forgot about that. Naruto had the decency to look a bit ashamed of himself. And that is what led to your hatred of humans? That was a part of it, yes. The main reason, however, aside from Madara controlling me, being sealed for almost 100 years, and then being released, controlled and sealed all over again, is that my father, the sage of the 6 paths, who dedicated his entire existence to peace, spread his teachings and vast wisdom to you humans, hoping you people would understand one another and come together and live happily in the peace he created by destroying the Gyubi. Instead, his own sons turned on each other and the world used his own teachings of Ninshu to fuel their actions of hatred and petty revenge. That is why I have come to hate humans. Kurama finished his lecture with a large sigh. Okay, I get that, but wait, wasn't I in the middle of something? Naruto finished his thought 1 second before he was punched in the face by a rather pissed off Tenten. Naruto sennnsseei. The enraged teen girl screamed. From all across the village people heard Naruto's screams of, "Holy shit, put away the weapons, Tenten. No, don't aim there. I'll need that someday." Nearby, on the other side of the village at the local hot springs, Jiraiya heard his godson's screams while he was peeping. Sniff, sniff almost brings a tear to my eye. To think my little Naruto is taking after his godfather so well. Minato, you'd be so proud. Jiraiya yelled to the heavens rather dramatically, with tears pouring down his face. His lower lip quivering as well. Jiraiya suddenly turned around though after hearing the sounds of knuckles cracking. Whoa, wait a sec ladies, I can explain. Naruto was currently walking down the street on his way toward Anko's apartment. His jaw still had a phantom ache from where Tenten had socked him. He had apologized profusely to the girl and explained that he was drawn into a conversation with Kurama and meant no disrespect toward her. She had forgiven him rather easily and even seemed sheepish about resorting to violence so quickly. As it turned out, Tenten had a rather strong fear and pet peeve of not being taken seriously as a ninja because of her. It was a fear most kunoichi have, and he was more than understanding towards her. After the apologies were out of the way, he and Tenten had a rather productive training session, before she had left to go meet up with her team. This left Naruto with nothing important to do, so he decided to find Anko. He hadn't seen the eccentric kunoichi since before he left for Wave, and honestly he missed her. It was a strange feeling for him, and he wasn't too sure what it meant, but he was sure he'd figure out in time. Anko was on her way to see Naruto. She had just heard from her best friend Kurenai that her favorite blonde lady killer was back from his latest mission. She had got a little hot and bothered when she read the newest bingo book only to see a picture of the handsome genin in one of its many pages. To think a shinobi so young could already be in the bingo books was mind-boggling, especially when you factor in his noted accomplishments in Wave Country. To defeat a Jonin of Zabuza's stature, not once but twice, is no mean feat. Hell, she was even secure enough to admit that she wouldn't have been able to do it. Smart, and powerful. I better not let him get away. Anko thought to herself as she licked her lips in a manner reminiscent of a certain snake sanin. Just as she finished her less than PG thoughts, she spotted her selected target casually strolling down the street, carefree smile on his handsome face. Anko smirked to herself as she thought up a way to try and embarrass him. Naruto was closing in on Anko's apartment. He clicked his tongue in distaste. He really hated that she lived in this section of the village. But for now he couldn't do anything about it. Maybe sometime further into. Naruto quickly avoided a kunai aimed for his head and ducked into a nearby ally. As he was about to try and sense out his assailant, he suddenly felt a rather generous pair of breasts crush into his back, and an arm encircle his waist. "Why hello there, Foxy-kun," Anko whispered seductively into his ear. She leaned forward a bit, pressing her chest even harder against his back as she let her tongue trace against his bleeding cheek, from where her kunai nicked him. Yummy. Your blood tastes so good. Naruto-kun," Anko whispered into his ear with a slight moan. Anko laughed internally to herself. Score 1 for Anko, he's gonna be putty in my han. Her thoughts were interrupted as she felt a kunai slide gently across her inner thigh, under her skirt and only 5 or 6 inches south of her lady parts. Naruto pulled the kunai in front of her face, then slowly and sensually licked the blood off the edge of his blade. In front of her wide eyes. The Naruto in front of her poofed into smoke, and she soon found 2 strong yet small arms wrap around her midsection, just under her breasts. She then turned an incredibly new shade of red as she felt an incredibly hard object press against her ass. Holy shit, what the fuck is this guy packing? Anko thought to herself as she tried to reboot her brain. Naruto breathed huskily into her ear and whispered, I think you taste even better in Ko-chan. Naruto slowly turned her around to face him. He had a shit-eating grin on his face, but before Anko could get upset with him turning the tables on her, he slowly leaned his face in towards hers. Holy shit, he isn't doing what I think he is. I don't know if I'm ready for this just yet. Think Anko, think, she screamed to herself. As it turns out, Anko may put on a sadistic and kinky mask, But underneath it she was a bit shy, introverted, and rather socially stunted. Especially when it comes to all things romance. She didn't have much experience with men in general. She had only had once, and the bastard had only used her for bragging rights, so she didn't go looking for a boyfriend again. Not to say she wasn't interested in romance, but she had serious trust issues and most of the good men in the village were either taken, or too afraid to ask her out. Either that or they thought she was some psycho slut that they would likely get disease from or get killed by. It was her own fault in a way, but right now she had a decent guy in front of her, about to do something she had longed for, and she was freaking out. Just as she accepted what was about to happen, and started to lean in as well. Naruto averted his head and landed a soft sweet kiss against her forehead. The young man looked into Anko's face and saw confusion, worry, a bit of anger, but most of all disappointment. Anko puffed out her cheeks cutely while she turned 3 shades of red. "You bastard, why did you do that?" Naruto smiled an apologetic smile and then leaned in close again. "Next time don't try to tease me, Anko-chan." Anko's eyes widened and she slapped him on the shoulder. "You jerk," she yelled in annoyance. "I mean, I honestly thought that." She was cut off however as Naruto took that moment to crash his lips onto hers. Anko was surprised as was shown by her widened eyes. Soon though she got her wits back and returned the kiss with just as much passion. Wrapping her arms around his neck and pulling him close. Naruto cupped her cheeks and slowly pulled back and smiled a small happy smile at the still starstruck Anko. It wasn't a long kiss, and it wasn't lewd or obscene. On the same hand it wasn't a weak one either. It contained just the right mix of passion and vigor without taking away the message that Naruto was trying to convey. And Anko got that message loud and clear. "I like you." Anko finally recovered and smiled a rare happy smile at the young blonde. He laughed lightly and pressed his nose against hers. "Want to get some dango, Anko-chan?" Naruto asked with a wink. "Tilda Kami, I think I'm in love." "Tilda?" Anko thought to herself as butterflies flapped in her stomach. "And that's it, Anko-chan," Naruto said as he bit into another ball of dango. After the scene in the alleyway, Naruto had escorted the beautiful Kunoichi to her favorite dango restaurant and regaled her with all of the details of his latest mission. "Only you, Naruto-kun, would wind up in an A-ranked mission your first tour out of the village," Anko stated with a laugh. "Oi, my luck's pretty good considering how things turned out," Naruto replied with a pout. Anko grinned at her favorite blonde knucklehead and nodded. "Your luck's pretty good considering what happened out in that alley," Anko returned with a saucy wink. Naruto blushed a bit and Anko swore she heard him mutter, "Don't I know it?" under his breath. Anko smiled a small true smile at that. "It's surprising though, you've always been kind of shy when I try and flirt with you." "What change?" Anko asked softly with genuine curiosity and small degree of hope. Naruto smiled and leaned forward a bit in his chair. "I've told you about the seal that was used on me, to inherit my family's memories, right?" Naruto asked. Anko nodded her head in the affirmative, confused as to what that had to do with what happened. "Well," Naruto continued, "I didn't just inherit their memories, Anko. I was 6 when the seal was applied, and so my personality along with the rest of my growing psyche had yet to mature. As such, I inherited different personality traits from my ancestors." Anko blinked at that as Naruto sighed and continued. "What I mean to say is, at times when faced with new experiences, I subconsciously draw upon similar experiences from my ancestors' memories, and react according to how they would have reacted. For example, typically in battle I tend to take on the personalities of my grandfathers. It's confusing, I know, but don't worry, it's not permanent. As I grow and mature, my own personality will as well. It's true I may have traces of my mother or my grandfather's, but that's actually pretty normal for most people. Not that my life has been anywhere near normal." Naruto snorted. The whole time during Naruto's explanation a feeling of sadness and disappointment was filling Anko's stomach. "Does that mean, that look, that kiss was?" Naruto, seemingly reading the woman's mind, took her hands in his and leaned forward to stare into her eyes. "Don't," he said with a rare scene seriousness. "Don't you even dare," he commanded. Anko's eyes widened, tears starting to collect. Naruto's face softened. "That kiss was all me, Anko-chan. I kissed you because I wanted to, and I have no regrets. I want to try us," he said softly while squeezing her hands gently. "Only if you want to, that is." And like that, Anko's smile came out in full bloom. You mean it, Naruto? Anko asked, smile never fading. Naruto smiled right back. Hell yes, Anko, tilde? He was cut off however as the eccentric Kunoichi glomped him from across the table. After a few seconds of Anko suffocating the struggling boy's face between her breasts, she finally felt all the strange looks and jealous glares from the other patrons. What the fuck are you COCKSUCKERS looking at, tilde? Anko yelled with tick mark on her head and Hinata-style blush across her face. Later, I had a great time, Naruto-kun. Anko stated with a true smile on her face. The two were standing on her doorstep after Naruto had walked her home. Naruto smiled back at her. As did I, Anko-chan. He leaned in slowly as his eyelids started to close. She smiled and did the same. Soon their lips softly joined together and their hearts both soared. Naruto pulled back slowly and smiled at the equally happy Kunoichi. However, if this is going to work, if I'm going to be your boyfriend, there are some things you need to promise me. Anko's eyes widened a bit before narrowing slightly, a bit afraid of what he might ask. First, promise me you won't lie to me. You will always talk to me about any problems or concerns you have. Anko relaxed and nodded. You have to promise that as well, she said with a small grin. Naruto nodded and continued. Second, if you ever become uninterested or whatever and want to be with someone else, break up with me. I don't think I could ever handle it if. Anko hugged him. Don't worry. I swear to Kami, I will never cheat on you. I've been betrayed so fucking bad before. I could never do that to someone, especially you. Naruto nodded and kissed her forehead. And I of course promise the same. I don't know how this is going to work out, if we will have the happy ending we both deserve. But I'm willing to take that gamble, Anko-chan. Naruto stated as he smiled at the fearsome Kunoichi. Damn right, Naruto. She kissed him quickly before she asked, is that everything? Naruto looked in her eyes, then he stepped back and eyed her body. Primarily her armored mesh shirt and short skirt. Yeah, please change your clothes. He deadpanned. Anko's eyes narrowed and she was about to retort before Naruto hugged her body tight and snarled in her ear. I can't stand the thought of anyone else checking out my girlfriend. He hissed in her ear. Anko's eyes widened and she blushed heavily in response. She had never seen him so dominate before. She grinned wide though. It was kinda hot. Jealous are we? She laughed but then pulled away and kissed him again. I'll cover up some more. Don't worry, if anyone is gonna see my goods, it's not gonna be anyone but you. Anko said this while lifting her sizable breasts up and down with her hands. She laughed a boisterous laugh as she saw a line of blood leak from his nose. Soon though his brain rebooted and he smiled after wiping it away. His face became somber and he held her head in his hands. And last but most important, when it's just the two of us, drop the mask. He stopped her from interrupting and continued. I've only seen a few glimpses of it, but underneath all that big talk and that loud and crazy persona, I've seen the true you. The real you, and I like her more than you could ever imagine. So, please, when we're alone, always be yourself. He finished his little speech by kissing her hard on the mouth. A few small tears leaked from the corners of her eyes, but she smiled. She smiled that true, radiant smile that she often never showed off to the world, and she whispered, I promise. He gently stroked her cheek. I'll see you tomorrow? He asked. She nodded and pecked him once more on the lips before going inside for the night. Naruto smiled and headed toward the Hokage Tower where the council meeting would be taking place soon. Inside her house, Anko collapsed on her bed, excitement running through her features. I've got a boyfriend, tilde, she cheered over and over again in her head. She buried her slightly red face in her hands as she remembered the kiss in the alleyway. She sighed and a small smile played on her face. I already can't wait for tomorrow. Shit, I need some new clothes too, she said wistfully before drifting off to sleep. Later, council room. The council room was both large and open. It had a high ceiling held by tall red column. At the far end of the room was the desk for the Hokage and his two advisors, Homura Mitokado and Kaharu Utatane. The two elders were once Hiruzen's best friends and teammates. Shortly after he became Hokage, he made them both his advisors, and after they retired as shinobi, they took on a dual role as the voice of the civilians. Any problem a civilian of Konoha had with any issue excluding shinobi matters was to be brought to the elders' attention. They would then bring these concerns to the Hokage, and if necessary the clan heads. The elders sat to his left and right whilst he sat in the center. Two large tables ran lengthwise on both sides of the room. Here sat the clan heads, and on some occasions high-ranking shinobi such as Jiraiya, the Anbu captain, and occasionally even Danzo Shimura, the former leader of the Root Institution. A, supposedly, disbanded group similar to Anbu. Hiruzen had his suspicions Root was still active, but he had little to no proof. Currently on the left side were seated, Inoichi Yamanaka, head of the Yamanaka clan famous for their various, mind jutsu. Choza Akamichi, head of the Akamichi clan, famous for their strength, appetite, and body expansion jutsu. Shikaku Nara, head of the Nara clan famous for their laziness, incredible intelligence and tactical genius, as well as their many shadow jutsu. Next to Shikaku were two empty seats. One for the nearly defunct Kurama clan, and the final was for the formerly great Uchiha clan. This seat would remain empty until Sasuke rises to the level of Chunin. Seated at the opposite table directly across from Inoichi sat Shibi Aburame, head of the Aburame clan famous for their stoicism, logical mind, and insect-related jutsu. After Shibi was Hiyashi Hyuga, head of the Hyuga clan's main branch. The Hyuga were famous for their strict proper outward demeanor, perfectionism, and their famous dojutsu the Byakugan among other things. Next to Hiyashi was Sume Inuzuka, head of the Inuzuka clan. The clan was famous for their often brash, boisterous and wild demeanor, their fierce loyalty and pack mentality, as well as their ninkin, or ninja dogs, that each member partnered and fought with. Next to Sume sat our hero Naruto Uzumaki, head of the late but great Uzumaki clan. Famous for their red hair, hot tempers, vast chakra reserves, longevity, and their mastery over Fujinjutsu and Kenjutsu. Next to Naruto was an empty seat reserved for the deceased Senju clan, whose only surviving member Tsunade, granddaughter of the Shodai Hokage, was no longer in the village at this time. I call this meeting to order. Hiruzen commanded from his spot at the head of the meeting hall. We have gathered here this evening to go over new information regarding Team Kakashi's recent mission to Wave Country. Before you all is the mission report. I assume you all have read it? Hiruzen asked. Collectively the clan heads nodded in the affirmative, so the Hokage continued. We are gathered to discuss key information that has been kept out of the report for security purposes. Let us begin. Shikaku Nara leaned forward and addressed Naruto. Going over the mission report, I noticed it was never stated just how much you paid Zabuza, and why you did so in the first place. I take it there is more to this? Shikaku asked curiously. Yes, I paid Zabuza a total sum of 2 million ryo. Naruto stated casually. Meanwhile Hiyashi Hyuga was wheezing from a sudden coughing fit. The other council members were not doing too much better, and the elders looked like they were both about to have a stroke. Why so much, Naruto-san? The ever-stoic Shibi asked the young clan head. I paid him that much for a few reasons. 1. To ensure his trust and the safety of my team and the client, and 2. To help Kiri's rebel faction in overthrowing Yagura, the current Mizukage, and restoring peace to Kiri. Shibi nodded at the logical answer, but that still rose questions as to why Naruto cared about helping the rebels. A question that was asked by Inoichi. For a few reasons actually. Besides the moral and ethical motivations I have brought on by the thought of genocide. He let that sit in for a second. I also have a problem with one of my fellow Jinchuriki making life harder for our kind. Quite truthfully, I hate the thought of needless bloodshed and suffering wherever it occurs. And to systematically kill an entire people, your own countrymen, simply because they have a Kekkei Genkai? Damn right I have a problem with it, Naruto said as he crossed his arms. While I can understand that, and many of us here sympathize with the people of Kiri, are you sure it was wise? I mean, if the rebels lose and Yagura were to ever find out you aided against him, albeit in an indirect manner, it could paint an already painted target on your back, not to mention a target on the village. Asked Shikaku. A few of the other council members and even the Hokage nodded at Shikaku's logic and waited to see Naruto's point of view. While I perfectly understand your concern, I really don't think that we have much to worry about. Even if the rebels lose and Yagura were to find out, however slim that may be, I don't think he would be in a position to try anything. The country's been at war for years, and now no matter the victor, It's going to take them years to even hope to stand against any of the villages like they have before. Besides, Iwa and Kumo may step in and try and put them down for good, even absorbing their citizens and shinobi. As I am sure you know, Kumo and to a lesser extent Iwa have been sending small squads to try and locate Kekkei Genkei refugees to add to their ranks. And I'm sure we all know how much the Raikage loves bloodlines. Naruto stated while taking a quick glance towards Hiyashi, who sneered at the thought of the man responsible for his brother's death. In my opinion, we stand more to gain by helping the rebels, and forming a treaty with Kiri after order has been re-established. I understand they have reached out in the past? Naruto directed the question towards his grandfather figure. Hiruzen nodded in affirmation. Yes, not long into the beginning of the Civil War. We declined however because we were still too weak from the Kyuubi attack. That's the last we've heard from the rebels, I'm afraid. Koharu added in. You're not alone in your sentiments, Uzumaki-san. But even now I'm not sure how much aid we could really give as far as shinobi support at this time. Sai figured as much. It's really too bad though. Naruto said. All of the council members nodded in agreement. Anyway, back on track. Was there anything else we need to be aware of concerning this mission? Sume asked from next to Naruto. Naruto sat forward and gazed over his interlocked fingers at each person in the room. This grabbed Shikaku and Hiyashi's attention, so they leaned forward and listened even more closely. Yes, it's actually something huge, and it concerns nearly everyone in this room directly. You see, before killing Gato I escorted him to his mansion and forced him to do some things for me. First and foremost, he signed all deeds and titles that he had extorted from the people of Wave back to their original owners, along with any money or personal property. All of this was distributed back to the people with no complications. Quote, secondly, all ships and warehouses located around the island community that were obtained legally after the bastard first settled in Wave were signed over to the village of Konoha as a whole. He waited as this settled in with everyone before dropping the bomb. And lastly and most importantly, I made him sign over Gato Corp. And all of its properties, landholdings, and subsidiaries over to yours truly. He finished with a smirk. From all across the village you could hear shouts of, "What? Do you know what this means?" Choza stared wide-eyed. How troublesome. Shikaku deadpanned. Kami, whispered Inoichi. Laughed Sume. Shibi and Hiyashi just gazed at Naruto, giving nothing away. Homura and Koharu were seeing dollar signs. Hiruzen tried to hold in a proud chuckle. As it stands, combining my clan's already vast fortune, not to mention my father's pretty substantial bank account, with ownership of this company I am now the richest man in the entire elemental nations. Naruto stated with his patented grin. On his first mission, Hiyashi said as he face-palmed. In fact, if I wanted to, I could probably trade Uzushiogakure and some of my fortune to the Fire Daimyo for his title. It would make a good vacation home for him. Naruto pondered with his face tipped upward and this index finger on his chin. The surrounding council, Hokage included, face vaulted into their tables. They soon started to sweat drop, however, as Naruto began to drool as he imagined himself sitting in a palace, sitting upon the throne. The Fire Lord's crown rested atop his head as a naked Anko sat on his lap feeding him ramen. Some blood started flowing down his nose for no apparent reason. The collective thought was, if he's serious we're all fucking doomed. The council meeting was long and boring, but it finally came to a close. The councilors had spent hours laying out plans for trade routes, stores, and other such business proposals. Teams of Chunin and even Jonin would set to work on mopping up the remains of Gato's dark doings, and then Naruto would set to work building a new trade empire on the ashes of the evil little midget's former company. It would be a long and tedious task, he was sure, but the benefits to the village would far outweigh the headaches he was sure would come. For now though, sleep was calling his name. Naruto walked soundlessly down the dirt path to his home, street lamps casting his long shadow as he moved underhead. As he approached the modest mansion, he was surprised to see someone shaking their head before turning away from his door and walking in his direction. Sasuke? Sasuke Uchiha was a proud young genin, the youngest son of Makoto and Fugaku Uchiha, the former clan head, and younger brother of the infamous clan killer, Itachi. He was cold, anti-social and at times arrogant. It was these things that made what he was about to do even more difficult. After seeing Naruto's strength during the Wave mission, he He decided that if he was ever going to be strong enough to defeat Itachi, he was going to need help. Who better to ask than Naruto Uzumaki, the strongest shinobi in his age group, and arguably one of the strongest ninja in Konoha. If asking for help meant gaining power, then he was willing to swallow his pride. After spending 20 minutes waiting outside Naruto's house at 10 o'clock in the evening, however, he decided it was best he ask later. With a sigh, he turned around only to be addressed by the person he was looking for. "Sasuke?" Naruto said with evident surprise on his face. "What's going on? Were you looking for me?" Sasuke turned his head away. His earlier confidence at asking for training from Naruto, swallowed up by his pride and embarrassment. Eventually, though, he stowed it away for the sake of his self-given mission of vengeance. "Can we talk? Inside if you don't mind?" Naruto nodded his head, some surprise still seen on his face. "Sure thing, come on in and I'll make us some tea." What does Sasuke want? And why does he seem so nervous? Naruto thought to himself. After setting the kettle on the stove to boil, Naruto joined Sasuke at the kitchen table. "So what can I do for you, Sasuke?" Sasuke thought deeply on just what it was he wanted from his teammate. He thought about the months that had passed since graduating the academy, the months he had spent training solo and with Team 7. Sure, he had made good progress under Kakashi and sometimes Naruto's training. Sakura herself had come a long way from the silly little fangirl she was in the academy. Sasuke was sure that if life continued the way it was now, then in 5 or 6 years he would definitely be powerful, but that wasn't good enough. He needed power quickly, and he needed a lot of it if he was ever going to stand a chance against Itachi. Naruto was powerful, more powerful than anyone in his age group, and he was sure if he went all out then he would even be more powerful than Kakashi. In a true fight to the death, with no punches pulled, no handicaps taken, Naruto would kill Kakashi hands down, yet Naruto was the same age as Sasuke was. That was a scary and humbling thought. That was the difference in power between himself and Naruto. After thinking thoroughly about what he wanted to ask, he finally found his teammate's eyes with his own. "Please Naruto, I want you to train me." Naruto's eyes widened marginally before closing altogether. He took the tea kettle off of the stove and filled his and his teammates' cups before sitting in his seat and taking a sip of the delicious beverage. "Why?" he asked, eyes still closed. "I need to kill..." Sasuke began, his fist clenching against his teacup. "No, why should I be the one to train you? Kakashi is a good sensei and you have come far under his teachings." "But you're stronger," Sasuke argued. "Perhaps I am. What does that matter? Kakashi is still an A-ranked ninja and he is leagues stronger than you are. So again I ask, why me?" Sasuke paused at that. Why was he asking Naruto? Sure, he was more powerful than Kakashi, but was that the only reason? No, it wasn't, it couldn't be. So what was it? Was it his age? Maybe the way he carried himself? Maybe that was part of it, but the more he thought about it the more it became clear to him. Naruto was like him. They both came from tragic pasts. They both knew loss and the pain of betrayal, but it was more than that. He wanted Naruto to train him because Naruto inspired him. Naruto went through hell just like he had, but he came of it tall and proud. He smiled constantly, something he himself hardly ever did anymore. Naruto was the warrior he aspired to be like before the massacre. Strong like his brother but still carefree and happy. Sasuke then realized that he had forgotten to be happy a long time ago. In fact, these past months spent with Team 7 had been the happiest days he had ever had since the massacre. Naruto knew pain perhaps even greater than his own, but that didn't stop him from being happy now, and that happiness, that light didn't stop him from being powerful. Itachi had told him that hatred was the only thing that would make him strong, but if that was true, how was Naruto so strong? Was darkness and despair the only way? That was what he truly wanted to know. How did Naruto get so strong? "You're just like me," Sasuke started in a whisper. "You came from tragedy, from pain and anguish. But, somehow you're still whole. How? How are you still you? How can you smile and still be so carefree? How can you be so strong, yet, full of life? How do you do it? I want to know how you do it. Every day I think of that night. The night everything was taken from me. I can't escape it, the memories. I wake up at night sweating, screaming. Itachi told me that my hate would make me strong. But, you're stronger than me and yet you always smile." Sasuke's voice tapered off into a whisper as he stared lost at Naruto. A tear was tracing its way down his face and his hands were shaking. Naruto took a deep breath and then smiled at his teammate. I still think about it. The things that happened to me. And yes, I know how easy it is to want to give in to the darkness, the hate and the pain. But I also know that to give in would be to lose myself completely. I won't do that because I know that my parents, my clan would be ashamed if I took the easy way out, and let myself lose like that. I'm strong Sasuke because I choose to stand in the light. To protect my new friends and family. To be there for them like I wished someone was there for me. I'm strong because I choose love and friendship over hatred and despair. One becomes truly strong when they have something precious to protect. Haku told that to me, and I know that she is right. That Sasuke is what makes me strong. I have things to protect. Precious people, who I would gladly give my life for. It's that Sasuke, that need to protect at all costs that drives me to become strong, that pushes me further than anyone else. That Sasuke is the will of fire. And I embrace it with all of my being. Sasuke stared with wide eyes at his teammate. It was so hard to remember that Naruto was his age at moments like this. As Naruto delivered his passion-filled speech, he could have sworn he saw the past Hokage standing behind him. But that's not all that he saw or felt. Deep inside of himself where his very soul once felt cold and empty, he felt a small flicker of warmth. A single flame illuminating the darkness. The feeling felt wonderful, and he knew that he needed to feel even more of its warmth. Can you teach me? Sasuke asked hesitantly. Naruto closed his eyes and nodded his head. What kind of friend would I be if I didn't? He responded with a warm smile on his whiskered face. Sasuke looked back at him with shock. Friend? He thought to himself. Yes, I'd like that. Friends, he said with a small smile of his own. Naruto grabbed Sasuke's hand in a firm shake. Meet me at Training Ground 11 tomorrow at 7 o'clock, and we will begin your new training. He said with a smile.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.